Chicago never slept. It hunted. The city's pulse throbbed through concrete and steel like a predator's heartbeat, relentless and hungry. For Mara Voss, that savage rhythm was an addiction. Where others saw danger, she saw stories waiting to be unraveled. The body count had reached 5 now. 5 lives reduced to crime scene photos on her apartment wall. Young men torn apart with such violence that veteran cops turned away. The bite patterns defied explanation. Too large for dogs, too savage for humans. Official statements claimed animal attacks, but animals didn't carefully dispose of evidence. Animals didn't select victims with surgical precision. Mara's hands trembled slightly as she stared at the latest photo. Marcus Reynolds, 28, a paralegal who'd interned with her at the Tribune 3 years ago. His face smiled at her from an old staff photo, attached with a red pin to the timeline she'd constructed. The coincidence was too sharp to ignore. This wasn't just a story anymore, it was personal. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking. They're watching you." She deleted it, just like the last 3, but the unease lingered like smoke. A chill traced her spine as she glanced at her darkened window, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt. Rain-slick pavement mirrored neon signs as her heels struck a deliberate rhythm, each step bringing her closer to Calder's. The nightclub's reputation whispered through Chicago's underworld. Exclusive, dangerous, with a magnetic pull that kept the elite coming back, despite the whispers of those who entered and never returned. The club had been the last location of 2 victims before they disappeared. Tonight, she would find out why. She smoothed down her black dress, the silk sliding against her skin as she tucked the recorder deeper into her clutch. Her heartbeat quickened, not entirely from anticipation. The bouncer's eyes swept over her, lingering where the fabric clung to her curves. Press? His voice carried suspicion. Lifestyle feature. The lie came easily. Nightlife spotlight. His eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside. As she passed, Mara caught something in his expression. A flicker of what almost looked like pity. Not pity, regret. As if he'd seen this story before and knew exactly how it ended. The heavy door swung open, releasing a wave of heat and sound that crashed over her like breaking fever. The club was sin incarnate. Bass notes vibrated through her bones, each beat matching her quickening pulse. The air was thick with desire, perfume, sweat, and something wilder, something primal. Bodies moved against each other on the dance floor, shadowed silhouettes merging and separating in a ritual as old as time. And then, him. The crowd parted like they sensed a predator among them. Rhett Calder commanded the room without effort, leaning against the obsidian bar with casual dominance. His body was all hard angles and barely restrained power beneath his tailored black shirt. The top buttons lay open, revealing a triangle of tanned skin and the vulnerable hollow of his throat that somehow made him seem more dangerous, not less. When his eyes found hers across the room, Mara's breath caught, amber, burning, inhuman in their intensity. The connection between them snapped like an electric current. His lips curved into something too sharp to be a smile as he raised his glass in silent acknowledgement. As she moved toward him, a woman grabbed her arm, fingers digging in with desperate strength. "Don't," she whispered, her voice quavering. "Not him. Not if you want to live." The bartender's gaze flicked toward them, and the woman's grip instantly loosened, her expression smoothing into vacant politeness. "Enjoy your evening," the woman said, voice hollow. The fear was gone, but so was something else. A cold knot formed in Mara's stomach. Something was deeply wrong here, beyond murders, beyond nightclub secrets. For the first time, doubt crept in. Maybe she'd waded into waters too deep to navigate alone. Admiring the merchandise, Rhett's voice startled her. He'd crossed the room without her noticing, now standing close enough that she could feel the unnatural heat radiating from his skin. His scent enveloped her, cedar, whiskey, and something feral that lit a fire low in her spine, primitive and uninvited. Mara Voss, she forced her voice to remain steady despite the flutter in her chest. I'm writing a piece on Chicago's nightlife. You're investigating the deaths. Not a question. His gaze travelled over her face, lingering on her throat where her pulse betrayed her. Marcus Reynolds was your friend? Her stomach dropped. How did you... I make it my business to know who's looking for me. His fingers brushed her bare shoulder as he guided her toward a private alcove. The touch left trails of fire on her skin. And why? The music faded to a dull throb as they entered the secluded space. His body blocked the exit without seeming to. Predatory grace in every movement. 5 men are dead, she said, refusing to back down despite the warning bells clanging in her mind. 2 were last seen here. And you think I'm responsible? A muscle tightened in his jaw. Bold accusation from someone standing alone with me. If you wanted to hurt me, you'd have done it already. His eyes darkened, pupils expanding until the amber was a thin ring around bottomless black. Don't mistake restraint for safety, Ms. Voss. He moved closer, backing her against the wall without touching her. The air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. There are rules in this city. His voice dropped lower. Territories, boundaries. You're crossing lines you don't understand. Then help me understand them. The words came out steadier than she felt. His laugh was soft and dangerous. You have no idea what you're asking for. Try me. The challenge left her lips before she could stop it. Something shifted in his expression, hunger replacing caution. He leaned in, his lips a breath from her ear. Be careful what you invite, Mara. Some appetites, once awakened, can't be controlled. His palm pressed against the wall beside her head. She noticed his nails, slightly too sharp, slightly too strong. His sleeve rode up, revealing a strange, jagged scar circling his wrist like a shackle. It looked ancient, deliberate, like something meant to bind power rather than the result of injury. Her reporter's instinct warred with a more primal warning system firing in her brain. Part of her wanted to run, a deeper, more reckless part wanted to step closer. Before she could choose, a commotion erupted on the main floor. Rhett's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body tensing. For a split second, she could have sworn his eyes reflected light like an animal's in darkness. Stay here, he ordered, but she followed anyway, pushing through the crowd to see a pale man with silver-white hair standing in the center of the dance floor. Blood trickled from the mouth of a crumpled bouncer at his feet. Calder, the man said, his voice surprisingly gentle despite the violence of his entrance. We need to discuss your hospitality standards. His gaze swept the room with casual ownership. Rhett's posture changed, something ancient and feral in the way he moved toward the stranger. Silas, he said, voice controlled but vibrating with tension. This isn't the time or place. The air itself seemed to charge with hostility. Then Silas's eyes found her, curiosity replacing boredom. Interesting. He inhaled deeply, as if tasting her scent. She carries your mark already. Unusual for someone so fragile. Rhett's movement was blur. One moment standing 3 feet away, the next directly between her and Silas, a low sound rumbling from his chest that raised the hair on Mara's arms. She's protected, Rhett said, each word precise. Protected things are the most tempting to break, Silas replied with a smile that never reached his eyes. Careful with your treasures, Calder. Chicago has so many dark corners. His gaze lingered on Mara with clinical fascination. I do love watching stories write themselves. He backed away, 2 large men flanking him as he exited. The club's energy shifted instantly, music resuming as if nothing had happened. Rhett turned to her, composure restored except for the wildness still flickering behind his eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs, thoughts racing. The woman's terror, the bartender's control, Rhett's impossible speed, Silas's inhuman stillness. It all pointed to something her rational mind refused to accept. She wanted to ask what he was, but the words shriveled in her throat. She already knew the answer would change everything. His expression shuttered. "Not what you're looking for." He gripped her elbow, guiding her firmly toward the exit. "Don't come back, Mara. Next time, I won't be able to protect you." "I don't need protection." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. His smile was both bitter and sad. "Yes, you do." At the door, he leaned close one final time. "Forget what you saw tonight. Forget this story. Forget me." But as she stepped into the night, her skin still burning from his touch, Mara knew forgetting was impossible. For the first time in her career, she felt truly afraid. Not of death, but of what she might discover if she kept pulling this thread. Marcus's smiling face flashed in her memory, twisted against the crime scene photos of what remained of him. This story might not just end her career, it could end her. Yet she was already walking back to her apartment to add tonight's notes to her wall. Some hungers ran deeper than fear. What she didn't realize was that she'd been marked. As she disappeared into the city's shadows, two sets of inhuman eyes tracked her movements. One amber, one silver. The hunt had begun. Morning light filtered through Mara's blinds, illuminating the crime scene photos and notes plastered across her living room wall. She hadn't slept. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw amber irises watching her from the darkness. Her fingers traced the edge of her recorder, the device still warm from playing back last night's encounter for the dozenth time. Rhett Calder's voice filled her apartment, that low, dangerous rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "Be careful what you invite, Mara. Some appetites, once awakened, can't be controlled." She shivered despite the warmth of her coffee mug pressed between her palms. The nightclub owner was hiding something behind those predatory eyes, something that might explain the bodies piling up across Chicago's South Side, something that might explain why her skin still burned where he'd touched her. The business card he'd slipped into her clutch before she left sat on her desk. Heavy black cardstock embossed with a simple silver emblem, a stylized crescent. On the back, he'd written a time, 2 p.m., private entrance, a proper interview, on his territory, on his terms. Mara smiled. She'd have it no other way. The private entrance to Calder's was unmarked, just a steel door tucked between a high-end watch repair shop and a vintage record store. Mara checked her reflection in her phone's camera, smoothing her dark hair and adjusting her silk blouse. Professional enough to be taken seriously, provocative enough to distract. She'd learned long ago that a careful balance of both opened doors faster than either alone. She pressed the buzzer beside the door. No response, but the lock clicked open. Inside, the narrow hallway was bathed in soft amber light that led to a sleek elevator. As the doors slid closed, she took a steadying breath. The recorder nestled in her bag felt like a weapon. Her questions were loaded, cocked, and ready to fire. The elevator opened directly into a stunning office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across polished concrete floors. One wall displayed vintage whiskey bottles. Another held framed black-and-white photographs of the city through decades. But what drew her eye was the man standing at the window, his back to her. Rhett Calder was even more imposing in daylight. The tailored charcoal suit did nothing to soften the raw power evident in the width of his shoulders or the tension in his stance. He turned slowly, and Mara's breath caught. His eyes seemed lighter now, liquid gold rather than amber, but no less intense. "Ms. Voss," he said, voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Right on time." "Punctuality is a journalist's virtue," she replied, refusing to be intimidated by the way his gaze seemed to catalogue her every movement. Along with persistence. His lips curved into something too sharp to be a smile. "Is that what brought you back? Persistence? Professional curiosity?" She set her bag on the edge of his desk, keeping her recorder within easy reach. "My editor loved the idea of profiling Chicago's most exclusive nightclub, The one where people disappear. A muscle twitched in his jaw. People disappear all over this city. But they seem to disappear at a higher rate near your establishment. Rhett gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Would you like a drink? It's 2 in the afternoon. That wasn't a no. He crossed to the bar cart with a liquid grace that made even the simple act of pouring drinks look predatory. Journalism must be thirsty work, especially the kind that follows people into dark alleys. Her pulse quickened, so he'd noticed her surveillance. Of course he had. I follow stories wherever they lead, she said, accepting the glass without drinking. Right now, all roads lead to you. He settled into his chair, studying her with predatory focus. What exactly do you think I am, Ms. Voss? I think you're a man with secrets. She leaned forward, voice dropping. I think you run more than just a nightclub. I think you know what happened to those men. His expression remained perfectly controlled, but something flickered behind his eyes. Amusement, perhaps. Or danger. You think I'm a killer. I think you know killers. Rhett swirled his drink, the movement hypnotic. Everyone in Chicago knows killers, Ms. Voss. Some just don't realize it. The air between them felt charged, electric. Mara reached for her recorder. Do you mind if I... Yes. His hand closed over hers, stopping her. Heat radiated from his palm, scorching her skin through the thin barrier of courtesy. This conversation stays between us. He was close enough now that she could see flecks of copper in his irises, close enough to catch his scent. Cedar, whiskey, and a sharp edge of wilderness that didn't belong in daylight. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She withdrew her hand reluctantly. There would be no evidence, no proof to accompany her notes. The thought left her both vulnerable and strangely exhilarated. This story would be built on instinct alone, and her instincts were screaming. How long have you owned this club? She asked with forced casualness. 7 years. And before that? A pause. I travelled. Where? Everywhere there were shadows to hide in. She raised an eyebrow. That's not very specific. Neither are your questions. He leaned back, studying her with unsettling intensity. Ask what you really want to know, Mara. The way he said her name like he was tasting it sent a shiver down her spine. Fine. What's your connection to Silas Vega? Something dangerous flashed across his features. Where did you hear that name? I'm a journalist. I have sources. Sources who'll get you killed if you're not careful. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Silas isn't someone you want to know about. But you know him. Rhett's fingers tightened around his glass. We have history. What kind? The bloody kind. His voice hardened. The kind that should make you walk away. Mara leaned forward, refusing to be cowed. 5 men are dead, Mr. Calder, torn apart. I'm not walking away until I understand why. Maybe they asked too many questions. Is that a threat? His laugh was low, dangerous. If I wanted to threaten you, you wouldn't have to ask. The tension between them thickened, charged with something beyond antagonism, something primal and electric that made it difficult to breathe. Tell me about your club, she said, changing tactics. Why is it so exclusive? What happens behind those doors that need such secrecy? People come to Calder's to escape, he said, his gaze never leaving hers. To indulge appetites they can't satisfy elsewhere. What kind of appetites? His smile was razor-sharp. The kind that burn, Ms. Voss. The kind that consume you from the inside out until satisfying them is all you can think about. Heat bloomed in her core at his words, at the way his eyes seemed to see right through her. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. Yet she couldn't pull away. And what are your appetites, Mr. Calder? The question hung between them, heavy and charged. Rhett leaned forward, close enough that she could feel his breath against her cheek. Nothing you could survive knowing. Before she could respond, the door burst open. A tall, rangy man with dark eyes stormed in, his movements twitchy and aggressive. We've got a situation downstairs, he snapped, barely acknowledging Mara's presence. Vega's people. Rhett was on his feet in a blink, too fast for adrenaline, too smooth for a man. All casual charm vanished beneath something harder, colder. "Stay here," he ordered Mara, voice brooking no argument. She gave him 30 seconds. That was her version of obedience. The main floor of the club was empty of patrons at this hour, but not of tension. 3 men stood near the bar, one lean and snake-like, flanked by 2 larger figures whose bulky frames strained against expensive suits. The lean one smiled when he saw Rhett, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally sharp at the edges. "Calder," he drawled. "Just checking your security. Seems a bit porous lately." "Liam." Rhett's voice was controlled, but Mara caught the undercurrent of violence. Silas couldn't make it himself. He sent a message instead. Liam's smirk deepened as his gaze found Mara lurking in the shadows. "Oh, and he's very interested in your newest obsession." Rhett crossed the room in a heartbeat, positioning himself between Mara and Liam. The movement should have taken seconds. It was over before the clock could tick once. "She's off limits." "Nothing's off limits, Calder. You know that." Liam flicked something onto the bar. A silver pendant spattered with what looked horribly like dried blood. "This belonged to one of your staff. Consider it a warning." One of the larger men stepped forward, deliberately bumping into Rhett's shoulder. "Your territory's weak, just like—" What happened next defied physics. One moment the man was smirking. The next he was on his knees, arm bent at an impossible angle, Rhett's hand clamped around his throat. The movement had been too precise, a blur of controlled violence that no human muscle should be capable of executing. "Get out!" Rhett growled, and something in his voice had changed, deeper, rougher, almost a snarl. The air around him seemed to ripple like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Liam backed away, still smiling despite the clear defeat. "Temper, temper. How human of you, Calder." His gaze found Mara again. "Careful, sweetheart. When they lose control, they're not so pretty anymore." They left, dragging their injured companion. The silence that followed pressed against Mara's ears like a physical thing. Rhett's body remained coiled, tense, as if fighting something within himself. When he finally turned to her, his breathing was carefully measured, his movements deliberate, like someone trying very hard to appear normal. "You should have stayed upstairs." The roughness in his voice sent a thrill through her that wasn't entirely fear. "What was that?" she whispered. "What I just saw, that wasn't self-defense. No human moves like that." The words hung between them, the implication clear. Rhett's expression hardened. "You're in over your head, Mara. That's where the best stories are." She took a step closer, drawn to the danger rather than repelled by it. "What are they afraid of? What are you protecting?" "Not what. Who?" His gaze pinned her in place. "And now you've seen too much." "I've seen nothing you can't explain, so explain it." Rhett's expression shifted, something raw and hungry flashing across his face. He moved toward her, each step predatory, until she was backed against the bar, his body radiating heat and barely leashed power. "Do you know what happens to people who get too close to me, Mara?" His voice dropped to a whisper, his lips inches from hers. "They get hurt, they get scared, they run. I'm not scared." It was only half a lie. Her pulse raced, but not entirely from fear. His laugh was bitter. "You should be." "Tell me what's happening," she pressed, refusing to be intimidated despite the hammering of her heart. "The murders, Silas, what I just saw. Tell me." For a moment, something vulnerable flickered in his eyes, something almost human. Then it was gone, sealed behind walls of ice and steel. "Go home, Ms. Voss." He stepped back, putting distance between them. "Write your nightlife article. Forget what you saw today." "And if I don't?" The look he gave her was equal parts warning and hunger. "Then next time, I might not be able to protect you." She gathered her things, mind racing with questions she hadn't asked and answers she hadn't received. At the door, she paused. "This isn't over, Rhett." His smile was sad, knowing. It should be. Stepping out into the afternoon sunlight felt like emerging from a dream or a spell. Mara's skin still tingled where he'd been close to her, her mind replaying the impossible movement, the inhuman strength, the eyes that seemed to shift in moments of stress. She clutched her phone like a talisman, scrolling through research she'd compiled on unexplained phenomena, genetic anomalies, evolutionary throwbacks. Maybe it was some rare neurological disorder, or a genetic aberration. But deep in her gut, where instinct screamed louder than science, she knew better. As she walked away from Calder's, she nearly asked herself aloud what he was. But the answer lived already in her bones, cold and undeniable. The afternoon crowd swallowed her as she disappeared into the city's rhythm, already planning her next move. The hunt for truth was becoming something else entirely, something primal and inevitable. Across the street, unseen and waiting, Liam watched her vanish into the city's crowd. "You were right, Silas," he murmured into the phone. "She's the perfect bait." The morning after her confrontation with Rhett at his club, Mara found herself in familiar territory, surrounded by research running on caffeine and chasing shadows. But nothing about this story felt familiar anymore. Her wall of evidence had evolved. Crime scene photos still held their grim places, but now they shared space with city records, property deeds, and a timeline of Calder's ownership. A pattern was emerging, or rather, a conspicuous lack of one. Rhett Calder had materialized in Chicago 7 years ago, without history, without background, without digital footprint. The club that bore his name had transformed overnight from a failing dive bar into the most exclusive venue in the city. No loans, no investors, no explanation. Mara tapped her pen against her teeth, staring at the impossible gaps in his existence. People didn't appear from nowhere, unless they weren't people at all. She'd been avoiding the thought that had plagued her since witnessing his impossible speed, his inhuman strength. It was too absurd, too fantastical for a woman who'd built her career on facts. Yet, the evidence kept mounting. Her phone buzzed with a text from her editor. "Where's the nightlife piece?" Deadline was yesterday. She typed back, "Extension needed. Bigger story developing." The response was immediate. "You have 3 days. Then I need something printable." Mara dropped her phone onto her desk, tension knotting her shoulders. 3 days to make sense of something that defied sense entirely. 3 days to decide if she was chasing the story of her career or losing her mind. A headache pulsed behind her eyes as she reached for her jacket. She needed air, maybe answers. And as much as she hated to admit it, she needed to see him again. Night had settled over Chicago by the time Mara left her apartment. The city glowed against the darkness, a predator dressed in lights. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the streets slick and reflective, every puddle a mirror for neon and shadow. She didn't have a destination in mind, just a need to move, to think. Her feet carried her south toward Calder's, though she had no intention of going inside. Not yet, not without a plan. The side streets grew narrower as she walked, the crowds thinning until she found herself alone between aging brick buildings. A mistake. She knew better than to wander the south side after dark, especially with a bag full of expensive equipment. She quickened her pace, cursing her distraction. The footsteps behind her registered a moment too late. "Hey, pretty lady." The voice was slurred, menacing. "What's the hurry?" Mara didn't turn. She clutched her bag tighter and walked faster, adrenaline surging through her veins. "I'm talking to you." Heavier footfalls now, closing the distance. She rounded a corner, hoping for lights, people, safety, and found only a dead end. Dumpsters lined the brick wall at the alley's end, casting deep shadows in the weak glow of a single security light. Nowhere to run now. 2 men blocked the exit, their faces half hidden in darkness. The taller one pulled something from his pocket, the metallic glint of a blade catching the distant streetlight. "My wallet's in my bag," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Take it and go." "Oh, we'll take it." The second man stepped closer. "Among other things." Mara's hand slipped into her pocket, fingers wrapping around her keys. She'd taken self-defense classes. She knew to aim for the eyes, the throat, but against two men with a knife, the odds weren't in her favor. The taller man lunged forward, grabbing her arm with bruising force. Mara swung her keys at his face, scoring a bloody line across his cheek. He howled, more in rage than pain. "Bitch!" His fist connected with her jaw, sending her sprawling onto the wet pavement. Pain exploded through her head, vision blurring. She tasted blood, felt the rough concrete scraping her palms as she tried to crawl away. "Grab her bag," the tall one ordered, wiping blood from his face. "I'm going to teach this one some manners." Mara struggled to her feet, back pressed against the brick wall, searching desperately for a weapon, an escape. A miracle. What happened next defied explanation. A shadow detached itself from the darkness above, a figure dropping from a fire escape with impossible grace. It landed between Mara and her attackers in a predatory crouch. Rhett Calder rose slowly to his full height, his back to her. "Walk away," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. "Now." The muggers hesitated, momentarily stunned by his sudden appearance. "Mind your business, man," the knife wielder finally said. "This ain't your concern." "She is my concern." Something had changed in Rhett's voice, a deeper, rougher edge that raised the hair on Mara's arms. The second man stepped forward. "There's two of us, and one of—" Rhett moved. One moment he was standing in front of her. The next, the second mugger was airborne, thrown against a dumpster with bone-crushing force. The sound of impact echoed through the alley, followed by the thud of a body hitting pavement. The knife wielder slashed wildly, the blade arcing through empty air as Rhett sidestepped with fluid, inhuman speed. Rhett caught the man's wrist, twisting until something snapped. The knife clattered to the ground. A scream tore from the man's throat, cut short as Rhett's hand closed around his neck, lifting him off his feet with one arm. "I should kill you for touching her," Rhett growled, and the sound was wrong, too deep, too animal to come from a human throat. The man dangled in his grip, face purpling, eyes bulging with terror. "Rhett, stop!" Mara found her voice pushing away from the wall. "You'll kill him!" Rhett's head snapped toward her, and Mara's breath caught. His eyes glowed gold in the darkness, not reflected light, but illuminated from within, like flames behind amber glass. His face had changed, features sharper, more severe. When his lips pulled back in a snarl, she saw canines too long, too sharp for any man. "Please," she whispered. Something human flickered in those inhuman eyes. With a sound of disgust, he threw the man aside like a rag doll. The mugger scrambled to his feet, dragging his unconscious companion as he fled. Silence fell over the alley, broken only by Rhett's harsh breathing. He stood with his back to her, shoulders hunched, head bowed as if in pain. Mara's legs gave a tremble of delayed panic, her knees suddenly liquid as the last of her adrenaline faded. She leaned against the brick wall, tasting copper in her mouth, the reality of what she'd just witnessed crashing over her like ice water. "Don't look at me," he said, voice strained. "Not yet." Mara pushed herself from the wall, drawn to him despite her fear. "What are you?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Isn't it obvious by now?" "I need to hear you say it." Rhett's body shuddered, a visible ripple passing through his muscles as he fought for control. When he finally turned, his features had almost returned to normal. Almost, but not quite. His eyes still burned with unnatural light, his stance too tense, too coiled with barely restrained power. "I'm what your ancestors feared in the dark," he said quietly. "What they told stories about around fires. What they hunted." Mara swallowed. The word caught in her throat. "Werewolf," she finally whispered. The rational part of her rebelled, but her gut, the same instinct that told her when a story had teeth, only whispered, "Yes." "How?" she asked, voice steadier than she felt. "How is this possible?" "It's not magic, if that's what you're thinking." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture startlingly human. "It's biology. Genetics. A mutation that's been passed down through bloodlines for centuries. You can transform at will? Not completely. Not tonight. His jaw tightened. The full transformation is difficult to control. Painful. I avoid it when I can. The reporter in her sparked to life despite the shock, despite the fear. Questions tumbled through her mind about his abilities, his limitations, how many others existed like him. But one question burned brighter than the rest. "Why did you save me?" she asked. "Why are you always there when I'm in danger?" Something vulnerable flashed across his face. "I've been following you since you left Calder's." "Why?" "Because Silas's men have been following you too." The name sent ice through her veins. Silas Vega. He's like you? Yes, but not like me at all. Rhett's expression darkened. He leads the North Side pack. He's been hunting in my territory, killing those men you've been investigating. And now he's interested in you. Because I'm looking into the murders? Rhett's gaze dropped to the pavement. Because you smell like me. What does that mean? It means I've marked you. Not intentionally. He looked up, meeting her eyes. When our kind encounters someone we're drawn to, our scent clings to them. It happens through proximity, through touch. He hesitated. Through intention, sometimes. That night at the club, when I stood between you and Silas, my body was already responding to you, already leaving traces of my scent on your skin. And Silas can smell this bond. They all can. Once the bond sets in, it's not just about smell. It draws others. It's a challenge. His voice hardened. Which is why you're in danger. You need to drop this story, Mara. Walk away. Get out of Chicago if you can. I can't just... You don't understand what you're dealing with. The shout echoed off the brick walls, raw with emotion. This isn't just about murders anymore. Silas is using you to get to me, to challenge my territory. If he can't have you, he'll kill you just to hurt me. Why would hurting me hurt you? She asked, moving closer, breath catching in the space between them. Rhett went still, eyes tracking her movement. You know why. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something beyond fear, beyond the night's violence. Mara's pulse raced, but not from danger, not anymore. Show me, she whispered, his brow furrowed. Show you what? What you are. All of it. Rhett shook his head. You don't want to see that. I do. She closed the distance close enough now to feel the unnatural heat radiating from his skin. I need to understand. Conflict waged across his features, desire warring with restraint, the man fighting the beast. Finally, he closed his eyes. Stay where you are, he warned. Don't touch me. Then he let go. The change wasn't like the movies. No howling at the moon, no dramatic ripping of clothes. It was quieter, and somehow more terrifying for its silence, his body tensed, muscles rippling beneath his skin, his hands curled into fists, veins standing out like ropes along his forearms. His breathing deepened, became ragged. When he opened his eyes, they blazed gold, pupils contracted to feral slits. His features sharpened, cheekbones more pronounced, jaw stronger. When he parted his lips, canines gleamed in the dim light, elongated and deadly. It wasn't a full transformation. He still stood on two legs, still wore the shape of a man, but there was nothing human about the power that emanated from him, the predatory awareness that sharpened his gaze. Mara's breath caught, her body frozen between fascination and primal fear. This is what I am, he said, his voice distorted, rougher. Not man, not wolf, something in between. Against every instinct for self-preservation, Mara reached out, hand trembling in the space between them. Don't, he growled. She ignored the warning, fingers making contact with his chest. His skin burned beneath her touch, heart hammering like a caged animal beneath her palm. You're warm, she whispered. I'm burning, he replied, eyes never leaving hers. Something electric passed between them, a current of understanding, of acceptance. For a moment, the world beyond the alley ceased to exist. Then a slow, mocking applause shattered the silence. Rhett spun, positioning himself between Mara and the sound, a growl building in his chest. A lean figure emerged from the shadows at the alley's entrance, silver-white hair gleaming under the distant streetlight. Silas Vega clapped lazily, his smile sharp with amusement. "What a touching scene," he drawled. "The beast reveals himself, and the beauty doesn't run screaming. How very progressive of her." "Leave," Rhett snarled, the word barely intelligible through lengthened teeth. "I just wanted to see it for myself." Silas's gaze slid to Mara, his nostrils flaring as he inhaled deeply. "You've done more than mark her, Calder. You've claimed her. How predictable. What do you want, Silas?" "Just delivering a message." Silas stepped closer, his movements liquid, predatory. "The council is sending an observer. They've heard about your little territorial disputes and your unusual interest in a human journalist." Tension radiated from Rhett's body. "When?" 3 days. Silas's smile widened. "Clean up your messes by then, Calder. Starting with her." His eyes locked with Mara's, cold and calculating. "Or I'll clean them up for you." He backed away, still smiling, and disappeared into the darkness of the street beyond. Rhett remained frozen until Silas's footsteps faded completely. Then his body seemed to collapse in on itself, the partial transformation receding as he exhaled a shaking breath. Mara stared at the spot where Silas had vanished, her pulse still hammering from the charge in the air. When she looked at Rhett again, he wasn't the same, and neither was she. "What's the council?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Our governing body?" Rhett turned to her, features human once more, though exhaustion lined his face. "They enforce our laws, keep our existence secret." "And what happens if they find out about me?" His expression darkened. "Nothing good." Mara's mind raced, processing implications, connections, dangers. "The murders, they're part of this, aren't they? Silas killing in your territory, trying to provoke you." "Yes. And now I'm caught in the middle." Rhett stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "It's not too late, Mara. You can still walk away, deny everything. Say I'm crazy, delusional. The council might let you live if they believe you know nothing. And if I don't want to walk away?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Rhett's expression shifted, hope warring with fear. "Then you're choosing a dangerous path," he said softly, "one that will change everything." Mara thought of her apartment wall covered in evidence, her editor expecting a story, her life before tonight, ordered, predictable, safe. Then she thought of golden eyes burning in darkness, of impossible strength, of the electric current that passed between them when she touched him. "Maybe everything needs to change," she whispered. Rhett's gaze dropped to her lips for a heartbeat before he stepped back, putting distance between them. "I should get you home," he said. "It's not safe out here." As they walked from the alley, Mara felt the weight of the night's revelations settling over her. Werewolves existed. They walked among humans, fought territorial wars in city shadows, governed themselves with councils and laws, and one of them had claimed her, whatever that meant. She glanced at Rhett's profile, strong and guarded in the intermittent streetlight. He moved differently now that she knew what to look for, too graceful, too aware, like a predator restraining itself among prey. The story she'd been chasing had transformed, become something wilder and more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. And so had she, because the truth that terrified her most wasn't that monsters existed, it was that she wasn't afraid of the one walking beside her. She was drawn to him. Mara couldn't stop touching her wrist. No mark, no bite, no visible scar. But something had changed. She felt it in her pulse, faster, in her senses, sharper. Colours seemed more vibrant, sounds more distinct. The city smelled different, richer, more complex, each scent carrying information she'd never noticed before. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a world that had always existed beneath the surface of her perception. 3 computer screens glowed in the darkness of her apartment, each displaying different fragments of a man who shouldn't exist. Birth records, school transcripts, employment history. The normal digital footprint of a life lived in the 21st century. Rhett Calder had none of them. Ghost, Mara murmured, scrolling through another dead end. 7 years ago he had materialized in Chicago with enough capital to purchase a failing nightclub in cash. Before that, nothing. No childhood, no education, no family. As if he had stepped fully formed from the shadows. Her investigation had begun as professional curiosity. Now it felt like self-preservation. She rubbed her eyes, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. The clock on her laptop showed 3:17 a.m. She'd been at this for hours, chasing digital phantoms through databases and archives. Her editor expected a draft in 2 days, and all she had were questions without answers. A dull thud from her front door broke the silence. Mara froze, listening. Not knocking, something else. Something deliberate. She moved silently to her desk drawer, withdrawing the small canister of pepper spray she kept there. The floor creaked beneath her feet as she approached the door, heart hammering against her ribs. Through the peephole, she saw only an empty hallway. Another sound, a scrape of something sharp against wood. Mara hesitated, hand hovering over the deadbolt. Every instinct warned against opening the door, but the same curiosity that had made her a successful investigative journalist pushed her forward. She turned the lock and pulled the door open in one swift motion. The hallway was empty, but carved into the wooden surface of her door, fresh and deep, were 5 words. Stay out of pack business. Her blood ran cold. She slammed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt and chain with trembling hands. Her back flattened against the door as if her weight could keep the threat at bay. The message wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. She was being hunted. Dawn found Rhett on the roof of his building, bare-chested despite the morning chill. Meditation had failed him. Exercise had failed him. Sleep was impossible. Her essence still lingered on him from their encounter in the alley, clean sweat, adrenaline, and something uniquely Mara. It called to the wilder part of him, the part he'd spent years learning to control. That control was unraveling like a thread pulled too tight. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Cassian again? 3rd call in 12 hours. Rhett considered ignoring it, but his brother was nothing if not persistent. "What?" he answered, voice rough from lack of sleep. "The council observer arrives tomorrow, not in 3 days," Cassian said without preamble. Silas lied. Rhett cursed under his breath. Of course he did. Where's the woman? Safe. For now. A heavy sigh filtered through the connection. You know what the council will say about this. I didn't choose this, Rhett growled. But you're not walking away, either. Cassian's tone held no judgment, only concern. The scent bond. Is it just proximity or something deeper? Rhett closed his eyes, remembering the electric shock of Mara's fingers against his skin, the way his body had responded to her touch, the way his wolf had risen toward her. Something deeper. Then you know what Silas will do. He'll use her to force your hand, make you shift in public, break our most sacred law. I won't let him near her. You can't be everywhere, Rhett, and the council won't tolerate a human knowing about us, especially not a journalist. You need to end this. End this. As if he could simply walk away. As if the connection forming between them could be severed by will alone. I'll handle it, Rhett said finally. How? I don't know yet. The line went quiet for a moment. Be careful, brother, Cassian said. Silas wants your territory, your position. He'll use her to get it. After the call ended, Rhett stood motionless, watching the city awaken below. His territory stretched before him, the south side, with its tangle of neighborhoods and hidden corners. 7 years of peace he'd built, 1 block at a time. 7 years of keeping his kind in check, of establishing rules, of creating something like safety. Now it balanced on a knife's edge because of one woman. Because of the way her pulse quickened when she saw him, because of her fearlessness in the face of truth, because of the heat that spread through his chest when she spoke his name. His phone buzzed again. A text message. Something's happened. Need to see you. M. He was moving before he finished reading, instinct overriding caution. The wolf inside him already knew where to find her. Rhett found Mara waiting outside his club, her shoulders tense beneath a leather jacket, hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her face was pale except for 2 spots of colour high on her cheekbones. She looked up as he approached, relief washing over her features before hardening into determination. "Someone left a message on my door," she said without preamble, 5 words carved into the wood. "Stay out of pack business." Rhett's expression darkened. "Silas." "I figured as much." She pulled out her phone, showing him the photograph she'd taken of the damage. "Is this normal? Marking territory like some kind of animal?" "For some of us." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in the gesture. "Come inside. It's not safe to talk out here." The club was empty at this hour, chairs stacked on tables, the smell of cleaning products masking last night's sweat and alcohol. Rhett led her to his office, closing the door behind them. "Tell me about the council," Mara said, leaning against his desk. "What happens when they arrive?" Rhett paced the small space, too agitated to remain still. "They'll investigate the killings. They'll question Silas, me, our respective packs. And if they discover I've revealed our existence to a human, they'll kill you." The words caught in her throat. "Exile, more likely, for a first offence." His jaw tightened. "But you, they'd have no reason to show mercy. The council doesn't judge with nuance, only with tradition." Mara's face paled further, but her voice remained steady. "So, I'm a liability. To them, yes." He stopped pacing, facing her directly. "This is your last chance, Mara. Walk away. Forget what you've seen. Tell your editor the story fell through. And pretend none of this happened?" She gestured between them. "Pretend I don't know the truth?" "To stay alive?" "Yes." Mara moved away from the desk, approaching him with deliberate steps. "I've spent my entire career searching for truth, exposing secrets, bringing darkness into light." Her eyes held his, unflinching. "I can't unknow what I know now. I can't unsee what I've seen." "Then at least stop investigating. Stop digging. Stop making yourself a target. Is that why you've been following me? To keep me from finding the truth?" "I've been following you to keep you alive." The words erupted from him, raw and urgent. "Silas has had his people watching you since that first night at the club. If I hadn't been there in that alley—" "I know," she interrupted softly. "You saved my life." The anger drained from him, leaving something more vulnerable in its place. "And I'll keep doing it if I have to. But I can't be everywhere." Mara stepped closer, close enough that he could detect the lingering traces of fear beneath her determination, close enough that his body responded instinctively, heat building beneath his skin like a banked fire catching new fuel. "Then tell me how to protect myself," she said. "Tell me what I need to know about your world, about what being scent-linked really means." Rhett exhaled slowly, fighting for control. "It's not like ownership, not exactly. It's more like recognition." "Of what?" "Compatibility." The word felt inadequate. When one of our kind encounters someone whose presence causes a strong reaction, whether attraction or aggression, a trace of our scent clings to them. It's unconscious, biological, a signal to others. "A signal saying what?" "Mine." The word hung between them, heavy with implication. "And what happens if another werewolf ignores that signal?" Mara asked. "It depends. Sometimes it's just a fight for dominance." His expression hardened. "Other times it becomes a blood feud." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "The murders. They're not random killings. They're challenges from Silas. He's killing in your territory to provoke you." "Yes." "Why not just challenge you directly?" "Because he's smart. He knows I'm stronger. But if he can make me lose control, make me shift in public or kill in rage. You break your own laws, she finished, and the council removes you. Rhett nodded, surprised by her quickness. And I'm part of his strategy now, she continued. He thinks hurting me will push you over the edge. It would. The simple admission shocked them both into silence. Rhett hadn't meant to say it aloud, hadn't meant to reveal the depth of his feelings. But there it was, stark and honest between them. Mara eliminated the last of the distance between them. Why? We barely know each other. It doesn't matter, his voice roughened. Some connections don't need time. They just are. Her pulse quickened, the sound of it calling to something primal in his blood. Is that the wolf talking or the man? She asked quietly. Both. Always both. His hand lifted of its own accord, fingers brushing her cheek. That's what you need to understand, Mara. I'm not two separate beings. The wolf isn't something that possesses me. It's me. Always has been. She leaned into his touch, eyes never leaving his. Show me. Heat ignited through him at her request, a wildfire spreading through his veins. What do you mean? Not the transformation, she clarified. Show me what it feels like, to be what you are. Understanding dawned. She didn't want to observe from a distance. She wanted to experience, to know. Rhett's control wavered, the beast inside him straining toward her like a compass, finding north. If I let go even a little. I trust you. 3 words that undid him. His hand slid from her cheek to the nape of her neck, tangling in her hair as he drew her closer. Their foreheads touched, sharing breath, sharing warmth. His other arm encircled her waist, holding her against him. Close your eyes, he whispered. She obeyed. Listen to my heartbeat, he continued. Feel it against yours. Mara placed her palm against his chest, where his heart thundered beneath skin that burned hotter than human temperature. Now breathe with me, slowly. Their breaths synchronized, deep and measured. With each inhale, he allowed a fraction more of his true nature to surface, not shifting, but easing the constant restraint he maintained around humans. His senses sharpened exponentially, the symphony of her blood rushing through veins, the complex tapestry of her scent, the heat radiating from her skin. All of it intensified until she became his entire world. This is what it's like, he murmured against her temple. To feel everything, to hear everything, to sense the world so deeply it sometimes hurts. Her fingers curled against his chest. It's overwhelming, yes, but beautiful too. His control slipped further. The hand at her waist tightened, drawing her impossibly closer. Her soft gasp sent a shudder through him. Mara, he warned, voice dropping to a growl. She opened her eyes, finding his gaze. Without fear, without hesitation, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, questioning. But the moment she sighed against his mouth, something broke loose inside him. His arms encircled her fully, lifting her against him as the kiss deepened, became hungry. She responded with equal fervor, fingers threading through his hair, body arching into his. The taste of her was intoxicating, better than he had imagined, better than anything. A growl rumbled in his chest, vibrating between them. His teeth grazed her bottom lip, not enough to break skin, but enough to remind them both of what he was. Mara didn't pull away. Instead, she melted against him, accepting the danger, embracing it. That acceptance nearly undid him. The wolf roared forward, urging him to claim, to bind, to take. His kiss grew more demanding, his embrace tightening. With the last shreds of his control, Rhett broke away, setting her back on her feet. Both of them were breathing hard, pulses racing in tandem. We can't, he said hoarsely. Not yet. Not like this. She stared up at him, lips swollen from his kiss, eyes dark with desire. Why not? Because if we go further, the bond becomes permanent. For both of us. He stepped back, creating necessary distance. And you don't fully understand what that means. Confusion crossed her features. I thought I was already claimed. A mark fades, a bond doesn't. He ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the right words. What happens between us now would be deeper. Biological changes. Permanent ones. What kind of changes? Your senses would sharpen permanently. You'd be more attuned to me, able to sense my emotions, maybe even my thoughts, and I would feel the same with you. He met her eyes. It's rare between our kind and humans. Almost unheard of. But it's possible. Yes, if there's already a strong connection, if both parties are willing. Mara's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. That's why Silas sees me as a threat, not just because I'm investigating the murders, but because of what I could become to you. A vulnerability, Rhett said bluntly, or a source of strength, depending on how you see it. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she reached for him again, her fingers curling around his forearm. I need time, she said, to think about all this. Relief and disappointment warred within him. Relief that she wasn't running away, screaming. Disappointment that she wasn't ready to embrace what was forming between them. Time is the one thing we don't have, he reminded her. The council arrives tomorrow. Then we need a plan. Her reporter's instincts were surfacing, analytical mind engaging despite the emotional maelstrom. We need to deal with Silas and the council without either of us ending up dead. I can handle Silas. How? By killing him? Wouldn't that just prove you're the monster they think you are? Her perception cut through his defenses. What do you suggest then? I suggest we use my skills. Investigation, documentation, evidence. Determination hardened her features. If Silas is killing in your territory to frame you, we prove it. Before the council arrives. That's dangerous. So is doing nothing. Her grip on his arm tightened. I'm already involved, Rhett. Let me help. He searched her face, the same face that hadn't flinched when his eyes glowed gold in that dark alley. Mara, unshaken, unyielding, offering not to run but to fight. If you do this, he said slowly, there's no going back, no normal life, no pretending this world doesn't exist. Mara smiled, a flash of fierce joy that stirred something primal in his chest. Normal was overrated anyway. The wolf inside him responded to her courage, her fire. He found himself smiling back, a rare, genuine expression. We start tonight, he said. I'll show you what we're really dealing with. As she left his office, Rhett felt the heat in his blood cooling to a manageable simmer. But beneath it, something else was taking form. Something inescapable and profound. The scent bond was evolving, transforming from simple marker to something their world rarely witnessed. A true pairing between species. If the council discovered this, their verdict would be swift and merciless. Because a human who could sense their kind, who could potentially become like them through bonding alone, represented the greatest threat to their secrecy. And Silas knew it. The storm came at midnight. Not the kind that split skies or flooded gutters. This one brewed underground, in a forgotten freight tunnel beneath the south side, where the city's heartbeat turned savage and red. Mara stood on the edge of a concrete platform, watching a circle of men stripped to the waist under flickering industrial lights. They didn't talk. They stared, eyes glinting yellow gold in the dark, bodies tense, muscles coiled beneath skin that seemed too tight to contain what lurked beneath. She shouldn't be here, but Rhett had brought her. This is what you wanted to see, he'd said, his voice tight as he guided her through a rusted service door hidden behind a derelict warehouse. What we really are. The journey down had been a descent into another world. Spiral metal stairs that groaned beneath their weight, narrow passageways where moisture beaded on century-old brick, and finally, this cavernous space where Chicago's forgotten underground stretched into darkness. He hadn't spoken much during the drive, just kept one hand on the wheel and the other clenched on his thigh, muscles straining like he was fighting something from the inside out. "You said you wanted the truth," he'd told her flatly. "This is it." Now she stood surrounded by the pack. Dozens lined the ring, muscle, teeth, and tension waiting to snap. From both sides of the territorial divide, his and Silas's. The air hummed with electricity running through the gathered bodies like a current. They weren't just spectators, they were participants in something ancient and primal. And they were about to fight. Not in clubs, not in bars, in blood and sweat and bone. This wasn't sport. It was ritual. Rhett stripped methodically. Not like a man preparing for a fight, but a creature shedding its leash. Every inch of him looked carved, powerful, dangerous. Scars mapped his torso, evidence of battles won and lost, of years lived in violence. But his face was calm, too calm, like a mask locked over a volcano. The wolf stirred beneath his skin, eager for blood. But it wasn't the fight that had his pulse racing. It was knowing she was watching, her scent, her presence, anchoring him even as his wilder nature clawed for release. "You don't have to do this," Mara said under her breath. "I do." His voice was soft but unyielding. "Why?" "Because he challenged me, in front of everyone." Rhett's eyes never left the center of the makeshift arena. "If I don't answer it, I lose my right to lead." "Lead what?" He didn't answer. He just walked to the center of the ring, barefoot on the cold concrete, shoulders set in a line of perfect control. On the other side, Silas removed his own shirt with theatrical flair, revealing a leaner but equally deadly physique. Silver-white hair gleamed under the harsh lights as he cracked his neck and smiled. "Been a long time, Calder." "Long enough," Rhett replied, his voice devoid of emotion. Mara pushed through the crowd to the front of the circle, ignoring the glares from both sides. She needed to see. She needed to understand what Rhett was, what his world demanded of him. The moment they moved, it was like the air was torn apart. No bell, no announcement, just blood. Rhett lunged, fluid and brutal. Silas countered with savage speed. Fists collided like thunder. Bones cracked. A growl echoed through the tunnel. Not human. Not staged. The men weren't shifting fully, but their bodies rippled with something just under the surface. Knuckles extended into partial claws that grazed skin. Teeth flashed longer, sharper. Their eyes glowed golden in the dim light, illuminated from within. The scent of sweat and blood filled the air, metallic and primal. It wasn't a fight. It was a battle for dominance, and Mara felt every second of it like electricity through her spine. Silas fought dirty. He slammed Rhett against a steel pillar, brought his knee up into his ribs with a sickening crack, then elbowed him hard across the face. Blood sprayed in an arc that caught the light. Rhett staggered but didn't fall. His jaw was cut. His eyes gleamed brighter, more feral. He spat out a tooth and smiled. Then came the shift. Just a little. Just enough. His shoulders cracked, the sound wet and organic. His back curved, muscles bunched and reformed beneath his skin. When he turned, he moved like a predator, precise and lethal. In a single breath, he was behind Silas, fist buried in the other man's kidney. Silas howled, and Rhett didn't stop. He landed blow after blow, each with feral precision. He caught Silas's arm, twisted it at an impossible angle until bones snapped. The sound of it echoed through the tunnel, followed by Silas's roar of pain and rage. Rhett drove him to the ground, pinned him with inhuman strength, fangs bared at his rival's throat, and then he froze. For one beat, one heartbeat, he could have ended it. His body trembled with the need to finish what he'd started, but his chest rose and fell in ragged bursts. He hesitated. He looked at Mara. She didn't flinch, didn't plead, just saw him. And he stepped back. Silas dropped to his knees, coughing blood onto the concrete. Rhett stood tall, cracked knuckles bleeding, chest heaving. For a moment he seemed caught between worlds. Neither fully man nor beast, but something balanced on the knife's edge between them. "Don't ever come near her again," he said coldly. He straightened, jaw tight, and the crowd split before him, some with respect, some with fear, but all with recognition of what they'd witnessed. Power, restrained at the last possible moment. Mara rushed to meet him as the crowd dispersed, tension still thick in the air. Whispers passed like fire through the gathered packs. Rhett Calder had held back, and still won. What did it mean? Was he weak, or stronger than they'd imagined? "You're bleeding," she said, reaching for him. He didn't answer, just kept walking until they reached a darkened corridor where the concrete walls muffled the noise of the dispersing crowd. "You didn't kill him." She followed, heart still racing from what she'd witnessed. "I wanted to." His voice was rough, almost a growl. "Why didn't you?" He turned slowly, eyes still aglow with golden fire. "Because you were watching." Her breath hitched. "You stopped me. No one's ever done that before." His voice dropped lower, raw with revelation. "And I don't know if that makes you my tether, or my weakness." She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Her hand lifted almost of its own accord and placed itself against his bare chest. His heart pounded beneath her palm, fast, thunderous, wild. "You scare me too," she whispered. And there it was again, that moment between them, raw heat, adrenaline, and something too real to name. Their lips met in a bruising, breathless kiss. His hands found her waist, pulled her closer. His blood was still on his lips. So was hers. It ignited something primal within her, a recognition of life and power and danger all wrapped together. But just like before, he pulled away, his control reasserting itself like iron bands around his nature. "This isn't the place," he growled, "not with them still watching." "Then where?" The question came out ragged, desperate. He stared at her, jaw tight with restraint, and then he whispered, "Come with me." He took her to a private room in the depths of the tunnel system, bare, stone-walled, dimly lit by a single bulb. It felt like the world above didn't exist here. No city noises, no pretense of civilization, just the distant drip of water and their own breathing. She sat on the edge of a simple cot, eyes locked on him as he poured water from a bottle onto a cloth and wrapped it around his bleeding hand. "You fight like you've done it 1,000 times, she said. "I have." The simple admission hung in the air between them. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning since she'd watched him transform. "How long have you been like this?" He glanced at her, then back to his wounds. "Since I was 12. First shift hit during a panic attack after my father died. My bones bent, my skin felt like it was tearing apart. I thought I was dying." Her chest tightened at the image of a child experiencing such pain, such confusion. "You didn't choose this." "No one does." He dropped the bloodied cloth into a metal basin. "We're born with it, but it doesn't manifest until puberty. Some families know what's coming. Mine didn't." A sudden crash echoed from somewhere in the tunnels, metal against concrete, followed by snarls and raised voices. Rhett tensed, head snapping toward the sound, his muscles coiled, ready to move. "Silas's pack," he muttered, "still looking for a fight." The noise faded, but the tension in the room remained. Rhett turned back to her, movements still carrying the fluid grace she'd witnessed in the fight. Even wounded, even contained, there was something lethal about the way he occupied space. "I don't bring people into my world, Mara. I bury them out of it." "You think I'm afraid?" She held his gaze. "I know you are. I can smell it on you." His nostrils flared slightly. "But you're still here." "I'm afraid of Silas," she admitted. "I'm afraid of what's coming. But I'm more afraid of doing nothing." His hand cupped her jaw, thumb brushing her lower lip. The touch was gentle, at odds with the violence she'd witnessed. "That's what scares me the most." In the dim light, his wounds were already beginning to close, accelerated healing that marked him as something beyond human. Blood still clung to his skin, mapped the contours of muscles still tense from battle. "What I showed you tonight," he said quietly, "is what we are beneath the surface, what we try to control every minute of every day. Is that why the Council exists? To keep you hidden? To keep us controlled?" His hand dropped from her face. "To prevent the world from seeing what you saw tonight. Because if humans knew, really knew, what lived among them, they'd hunt you. They'd try." A bitter smile curved his lips. "And they'd die." Mara stood, bringing herself level with his gaze. "What I saw tonight was power, yes. But I also saw you choose restraint. This time, it matters that you can choose at all." She reached up, fingers hovering near the cut on his cheek that was already half healed. "That's not monstrous, that's strength. You've seen shadows, Mara. But even shadows have rules. You break them, and something always breaks back. Then show me." They didn't kiss again. They didn't need to. Not yet. But everything in the air between them felt like the moment before lightning hits. Charged, inevitable, dangerous. Rhett stepped back, creating necessary distance. "This world isn't yours." "I'm already in it," she countered. "You can still walk away." "Can I? After what I've seen? After what I know?" She shook her head. "The exposé died the moment I saw you fight. But the truth? That's still alive." His expression hardened. "The Council arrives tomorrow. If they sense what's forming between us, if they realize how much you know, they won't show mercy. Not to you. Not to me. Then we need to be ready." A harsh laugh escaped him. "Ready? For what? To fight creatures who've spent centuries perfecting the art of staying hidden? Who can rip a man apart in seconds? To expose Silas. To prove he's the one breaking your laws." Rhett's eyes flashed gold again, a brief surge of power that illuminated the darkness between them. "This isn't a story you can publish, Mara. This is survival." "Then teach me how to survive it." He studied her face, searching for something. Fear, perhaps, or doubt. He found neither. "There's no going back from this," he said finally. "If you stay with me, if we follow this through, you'll never see the world the same way again. I crossed that line the moment I saw your eyes in that alley." The truth of it settled between them. She'd witnessed something most humans never saw and lived to remember. The normal world, the one where werewolves existed only in fiction, was already gone for her. "Get some rest," Rhett said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow will test us both." "Where are you going?" "To make arrangements. To prepare my pack." He paused, hand on the door. "And to make sure Silas doesn't try to finish what we started tonight." After he left, Mara sat alone in the small room, the events of the night replaying in her mind. The violence, the primal power, the moment Rhett had looked at her across the arena and found his humanity again. Terror had burned away, leaving only clarity and a hunger for more. Outside, in the shadows where the tunnels met a forgotten service shaft, Silas watched from a broken stairwell, eyes narrow, jaw bruised, but mouth curved in a smile that held no warmth. He wiped blood from his lips, tasting his own defeat. But beneath the pain burned satisfaction. He'd seen it. The moment Rhett had hesitated, the moment he'd looked to the human woman for what? Permission, strength, weakness. "She's the key," he whispered to himself. Beside him, a lean woman with cropped dark hair materialized from the darkness. Vex, his second in command, whose predator's eyes missed nothing. "You call that restraint?" she muttered, eyeing the blood on his jaw with clinical interest. "He nearly killed you." "But he didn't," Silas straightened, bones already knitting beneath his skin. "And now we know." "Know what?" His smile widened, revealing teeth still sharp from the partial shift. "That if I can't break him." His gaze fixed on the corridor where Rhett had disappeared with Mara. "I'll unmake her instead." Mara woke to the taste of ash and copper in her mouth. Sunlight cut through the blinds of her apartment in thin, accusatory lines. For a moment, she lay still, trying to determine what was real and what had been a dream. The underground fight, the partial shift, the blood. Rhett's lips on hers. That part hadn't been a dream. Her body remembered, a phantom sensation of his hands at her waist, the heat of him against her in that darkened corridor. The memory lingered like smoke, impossible to grasp but refusing to dissipate. She touched her lips, still tender. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, had been buzzing, she realized, for the past hour. With a groan, she reached for it, blinking at the screen. 4 missed calls from Trina, 3 text messages. "You're ghosting me? I swear if you're dead in a ditch, I'm using your burner password and posting your drafts. Call me, now." Mara smirked and texted back. "Not dead, but I've seen some things. Let's meet." She needed to confide in someone who didn't smell like leather and wild things, someone who didn't look at her like he might kiss her or devour her, depending on the hour. She climbed out of bed, wincing at muscles she didn't know could ache. Last night had left its mark on her, figuratively and literally. A purple bruise bloomed on her shoulder where she'd been shoved against a wall during the crowd's dispersal. Small scratches mapped her forearms from the rough concrete passages. But those weren't the marks that bothered her. It was the invisible thread she felt pulling her back toward him. Like gravity, like hunger, like addiction. Under the shower's spray, she closed her eyes and tried to make sense of what she'd witnessed. Men who could partially shift their forms. Fangs and claws and golden eyes. Violence as ritual. Power as currency. And Rhett Calder at the center of it all, struggling to contain what lived beneath his skin. She pressed her forehead against the cool tile. The story had changed. She had changed. What had started as an exposé on underground violence had morphed into something she couldn't control, couldn't contain on the page. Because now, she was part of it. Trina stirred her iced coffee 3 times clockwise before speaking, a nervous habit she'd had since college. They sat at the back of a busy cafe, Mara's back to the wall so she could watch the door. Another new habit. "Let me get this straight," Trina said, keeping her voice low. "You're saying werewolves are real? Not like in stories," Mara said, leaning forward. "No full moon, no silver bullets, just men with something buried under their skin. Evolutionary anomalies," Trina squinted. "And Rhett? He's one of them?" "Yes. And you kissed him?" Mara looked down, heat rising to her cheeks. "More than once. Jesus, Mara." Trina set her coffee down hard enough that it sloshed over the rim. "You can't date a biological apex predator." "I'm not dating him." "But you want to." Mara didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The truth was more complicated than want. It was need, intrigue, fear, all tangled together like live wires. Trina leaned forward, eyes serious. "Let me ask you this. Do you trust him?" The question hit hard. Rhett had saved her life, twice. He'd told her truths he hadn't told anyone else, but he was also unpredictable, dangerous, caged lightning. "Sometimes," Mara admitted. "And sometimes I think he's about to lose control." Trina sipped her coffee. "Then maybe the real question is, do you trust yourself around him?" Mara stared into her untouched latte. "I don't know," she said finally, "but I know I can't walk away now." "Because of the story?" Mara met her friend's gaze. "Because of him." Trina's expression softened. "Mara, I've never seen you like this. Not even with—" "Don't," Mara cut her off. "This is different. That's what worries me." Trina reached across the table, gripping Mara's hand. "Just be careful and keep your phone on. If I don't hear from you every 12 hours, I'm calling the cops. They won't believe you." "About werewolves?" "No." Trina squeezed her hand. "But about a missing woman? They will." Night fell like a sentence. Mara stood outside Calder's, heart hammering against her ribs. She hadn't called ahead, hadn't warned him she was coming. Part of her feared he'd refused to see her after what had happened in the tunnels. The other part feared he wouldn't. She pushed through the doors, ignoring the curious glances from the bouncers who no longer stopped her. The club was half empty tonight, A Tuesday, slow and smoky. Music throbbed at a lower volume than usual, more atmosphere than assault. And there he was. Rhett stood alone on the mezzanine, leaning on the railing like a panther in quiet thought. His shirt was dark, sleeves rolled to the elbows, exposing forearms corded with muscle. His eyes flicked up the second she stepped in, tracking her like prey, like he'd sensed her before she'd even entered the building. She swallowed hard and made her way up the spiral staircase, each step deliberate. When she reached the top, he didn't move, just watched her with that unblinking golden gaze. "I need to talk to you," she said, breath quick. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded toward the private suite behind the DJ booth. Once inside, he closed the door quietly, and she felt suddenly trapped. Not by him, but by the electricity in the air between them. It crackled, invisible but undeniable. She paced, unable to stand still. This thing between us, this isn't just attraction. I feel like I'm wired wrong now, like my body's on fire. He stood against the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. That's the mark. Your senses are reacting to mine. So it's chemical, it's biological, instinct, bonding. But it feels like more. He stepped closer and the air seemed to compress around them. Because it is. She looked up at him, eyes defiant and full of questions. Then stopped holding back. "Mara, I know you want me. I know you're afraid of losing control, but what if I'm not?" He stared at her like she'd just spoken another language. "You should be. Then show me why." That was the last thing either of them said. In one breath, he closed the space between them, pinning her against the door with a heat that made her gasp. His hands slid to her waist, firm and urgent, but still gentle. His mouth found hers in a kiss that tasted like thunder, like desperation and restraint crumbling in real time. She melted into him, fingers digging into his shoulders, back arching instinctively. The weight of him against her was both overwhelming and not enough. His scent flooded her senses, pine and musk and something wilder, impossible to name. He kissed her like he was drowning, like she was air. His hands moved up her sides, just shy of where she ached to be touched. Even in this, he was holding back. One of his hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the kiss. The other splayed across her lower back, drawing her closer, but just when the fire threatened to consume them, he dragged his lips from hers, meeting her forehead with his own, breath ragged. "I can't," he said, eyes closed. "I can't do this to you. I'm here. I want this." His eyes opened and they burned gold in the dim light of the suite. Not human. Not anymore. "I'm not human," he rasped. "When I let go, I don't get to pull back. I've killed men in the middle of shifts. If I lose it with you..." She reached up and cupped his jaw. "Then don't lose it. Let me anchor you." His entire body trembled against hers. She could feel the effort it took for him to maintain control, could see it in the tension of his neck, the clench of his jaw. "I've spent my whole life keeping people at arm's length," he said, voice cracking. "And you make me want to destroy that distance." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away. "You're not the only one afraid of falling," she said. He brushed his lips against hers. "If I give in, I'm not sure who comes out the other side. Then let's find out together." Their foreheads touched, heat flaring between them. His heart thundered against her chest, matching her own racing pulse. She felt his fingers flex against her hip, like he was fighting the urge to pull her closer. His restraint was both frustrating and achingly tender. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered against her temple. "What if I'm stronger than you think?" A low sound escaped him, half growl, half laugh. "You're already stronger than I ever expected." She ran her hands down his chest, feeling the heat of him through the thin fabric of his shirt. "Then trust me to handle this, to handle you." His eyes darkened. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then show me." He cupped her face in both hands, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then, slowly, deliberately, he captured her mouth again, Gentler this time, but somehow more dangerous for its control. "If I start," he murmured against her lips, "I won't stop." The words sent a shiver down her spine, a promise, a warning, and just as the silence deepened, the suite door burst open. Cassian stood in the doorway, eyes wild. He took in the scene, Mara framed against the wall, Rhett's hands on her face, and grimaced. "Rhett!" he snapped, urgency overriding any embarrassment. "We have a problem." Rhett turned, instantly alert. The transformation was immediate, from lover to leader in the span of a heartbeat. Cassian's voice dropped. "Silas didn't just lose the fight. He took it personally. There's been an attack. 3 of our people, ambushed on the North Line. He's declaring open war." Rhett's eyes flared golden, brighter than before. Mara's blood chilled, and just like that, the heat between them cooled into something sharper. Danger. "Where?" Rhett demanded, already moving toward the door. "The old stockyards. They left one alive. Barely. Get the car. I'll meet you downstairs." Rhett's voice was steel. Cassian nodded and disappeared. Rhett turned back to Mara, his expression hard, remote. "I have to go. I'm coming with you." "No." The word was absolute. "This isn't your fight. It became my fight when he attacked me in the alley, when you brought me underground, when you kissed me." His jaw tightened. "This is pack business." "And I'm what? Just a human caught in the crossfire?" Pain flashed across his face. "You're the reason I still have something to lose." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And that terrifies me." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. She stepped forward, hand against his chest. "Then let me help you fight for it." He covered her hand with his own. "Not tonight, not this." He brushed his lips against her forehead. "Stay here. Liam will be outside the door in 5. Don't leave until he knocks." And before she could argue, he was gone, a shadow slipping through the doorway, leaving her with swollen lips, trembling hands, and the ghost of his warmth still pressed against her skin. She stood there for a long moment, her breath gradually steadying. Then she squared her shoulders, jaw set with sudden resolve. "He thinks I'll stay behind," she whispered, "but I've already chosen my side." Across the city, Silas crouched in an alley beside a bloodied corpse, smiling as he dipped his fingers in the red and wrote 3 letters on the concrete wall. RCM Rhett Calder's initials, and Mara's. A message, a declaration. War had begun. At his side, Vex watched with cold calculation. "You're baiting him." "I'm breaking him," Silas corrected, admiring his handiwork. "Take his pack, take his woman, take his control." He straightened, moonlight catching on the blood still fresh on his fingers. "By the time the council arrives, he'll be nothing but instinct and rage." Silas smiled. "And when he snaps, they'll thank me for putting him down." The word war echoed in Mara's ears long after Cassian had said it. It chased her through the cold corridors of Calder's, through the midnight streets as Liam drove them into the industrial district, and into a warehouse converted into something between a military bunker and a communal living space. The building loomed against the night sky, 3 stories of corrugated metal and concrete, windows blacked out, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. No sign, no name, nothing to mark it as anything but abandoned. Yet as they approached, Mara sensed movement in the shadows, sentries posted at strategic points, communicating through subtle gestures. She felt watched, evaluated, before they'd even reached the entrance. "Your people live here?" she asked, voice low. "Some of them," Rhett replied, his hand at the small of her back as they walked. "The ones who need protection, the ones who haven't learned control." Inside, the space opened into a cavernous main floor, lit by industrial fixtures and heat lamps that cast deep, angular shadows across worn concrete. The air smelled of metal, sweat, and something wilder, like ozone before a storm. And there they were, the pack. They had gathered in a loose semicircle, 20 men and women with predatory stares and tense, lean bodies. They all moved with the same tightly wound energy, as though they were always half a second away from pouncing. Some looked barely out of their teens, others bore the weathered faces of those who had survived decades of hiding. Mara followed behind Rhett, trying not to flinch under their collective scrutiny. Their eyes tracked her movement, some gold-flecked, others dark, all wary. "This is her," a tall woman with braided hair said, arms crossed, eyes narrow. Her posture radiated authority, not the alpha, but someone with rank. "Her name is Mara," Rhett replied, voice neutral but firm. The woman inhaled deeply, then tilted her head. "And she's marked?" Mara felt more than saw the collective intake of breath. The tension in the room shifted, curiosity morphing into something sharper, more complicated. Marked wasn't just biology. It was declaration, territory, bond. "She doesn't know the rules," said another, an older man with salt and pepper hair and scars across one cheek. "She's a civilian, a liability." His voice wasn't hostile, just matter of fact. The voice of someone who had seen too many things go wrong. "I'm not a child," Mara snapped before Rhett could answer. "And I'm not walking away." The silence thickened. Someone growled low, a sound that sent prickles down Mara's spine. Rhett stepped in front of her, voice cold and sharp. "She stays. She's under my protection. Anyone who questions that, talk to me." A younger man pushed forward from the back of the group. He moved like Rhett, the same fluid grace, the same controlled power, but with a rawer edge. His features echoed Rhett's, but sharper, less weathered. His eyes burned with barely contained challenge. "You already risked the clan once for her," he said, gesturing sharply. "You willing to die for her too?" "Cassian, the brother." Rhett didn't blink. "Yes." The word hung in the air. Simple. Absolute. Mara felt her breath catch, something hot and tight coiling in her chest. Cassian shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Then you'd better tell her everything, Alpha. Because if she's going to be one of us, she needs to know what it means to be hunted." The way he said Alpha, like it was a slur, not a title. The tension between the brothers crackled like live wires. Rhett's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Andre, status report." The older man with the scarred face nodded, instantly switching to tactical mode. 3 injured, 1 critical. Silas's people hit them at the market transfer. Targeted attack. They knew the route. "We've secured the perimeter here and at your other properties. Lookouts are posted. And our supplier connections? Intact, but nervous. The council arriving has everyone on edge. Double the security on the east corridor," Rhett said. "And prep a medical kit. I want to see our people." Andre nodded and moved away, already issuing quiet commands to others. The woman with braided hair stepped forward. "What about her?" She nodded toward Mara, not unkindly, but with clear concern. "Nina," Rhett acknowledged her. "Mara stays with me." Nina studied Mara for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we'll need to teach her. Fast." The group began to disperse, moving with purpose to various tasks. Only Cassian remained, eyes locked on Rhett with unresolved tension. "This isn't just about you anymore," he said, low enough that only Rhett and Mara could hear. "Your choices affect all of us." "I know that better than anyone," Rhett replied. Cassian's gaze shifted to Mara, evaluating. "Do you have any idea what you're walking into?" "I'm learning," she said, holding his stare. "Learn faster." He turned and walked away, shoulders rigid with unspoken anger. As Cassian disappeared into the shadows, a young woman, perhaps 19, with close-cropped hair and wary eyes, approached Mara. She hesitated, then offered a small bottle of water. "First time in a den," she said. It wasn't a question. "It's overwhelming at first, the scents, the sounds." Her voice was quiet but steady. "I'm Eli." Mara accepted the water gratefully. "Thank you." Eli nodded once. "If he trusts you, that means something." Her eyes flicked to Rhett, then back to Mara. "Not everyone here is against you." Before Mara could respond, Eli had melted back into the group, leaving behind that small gesture of acceptance. Rhett watched him go, something like regret passing over his features. "Your brother doesn't like me much," Mara observed. "Cassian doesn't like much of anything these days," Rhett said, "least of all me." Later, after Rhett had checked on his injured pack members and secured the perimeter, he brought Mara to a smaller room in the back of the warehouse. It was warmer, quieter, a private space carved out of the industrial surroundings, a cot in the corner, a worn leather chair, maps and photos pinned to the walls. She moved closer, studying the collection. "You keep records like a journalist." "Intelligence is survival," Rhett replied, watching her examine his work. Some were satellite images of the city with locations marked in red. Others were photographs of people, faces connected by red string and pushpins. Her finger traced a boundary line on one of the maps. "This your whole territory?" she asked. "The north and west sections. Silas controls the south now." Her fingers moved to a photo of a younger Rhett, standing shoulder to shoulder with a silver-haired man. They were smiling, genuine, unguarded, friends, not enemies. "Your pack," she said softly. Rhett leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "They're not my soldiers. They're family. Some blood, some not. But we bleed together." She traced a line of string that connected Rhett's photo to Cassian's. "Your brother seems angry." "He's been angry since we were kids, more so since I became Alpha." "And that was 5 years ago. Challenge fight. I didn't want it, but our previous Alpha was killed. The pack needed leadership." She turned to face him. "And Silas?" Rhett's expression darkened. "He was my second, before he challenged me, before he started hurting innocents. He wants to destroy you. And now that you're involved, he'll use you to do it." Mara sat on the edge of the cot, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was ebbing, leaving clarity in its wake. "I didn't ask for this," she said, rubbing her temples. "I know." His voice softened. "But I'm not backing out." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, resting his hands on her knees. In this position, with his head tilted up to hers, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "Then, you need to understand what's coming." She looked down at him, at this man who had killed and bled and protected her all in the same breath. His eyes weren't glowing now. They were soft, human, worried. "Tell me everything," she whispered. "No more secrets." He inhaled deeply, gathering thoughts he'd never fully voiced before. And he told her. About the first time he shifted at 12, bones breaking and reforming, skin stretching beyond its limits. About watching his father lose control years before, turning feral in their living room, tearing their family apart, forcing his mother to put him down. About how Rhett had wandered the streets for weeks after his first shift, feral and alone, until an older wolf called Marcus had found him, recognized what he was, and taken him in. He told her about the gene, rare, recessive, passing silently through generations until trauma or puberty triggered its expression. About how it rewired the brain, heightened the senses, granted impossible strength and healing. But at a cost. Hunger that never fully disappeared, rage that always simmered beneath the surface, a beast that lived within the skin. He told her about the underground, the laws they had created to survive, the oaths that bound them, the territorial lines that kept peace. He told her about Cassian, his younger brother, who had shifted at 14 during a school fight, who hated the blood, the rules, the burden, who wanted freedom but couldn't find it inside his own skin. He told her about Silas, his best friend once, his rival now, a man who believed power should never be hidden, who thought humans should know, should fear, should serve. And when he finished, voice rough from talking, Mara took his face in her hands and said, "I don't know how to protect you in your world, but I want to understand it. I want to try." Rhett leaned his forehead against hers. "Then stay close. And don't ever run from me. Not when I change. Not when it gets bad. I'm here, she said, even when it's bad. His hand cupped the back of her neck, holding her close. You need to know what you're risking. Tell me. His eyes met hers with grave intensity. The council has one law above all others. Stay hidden. And if you break it, they kill you. They don't just kill you, Mara. They erase you. A chill ran through her. What does that mean? The oldest ones can reach inside your mind. They call it mind wiping. His voice dropped lower. Most people end up shells of who they were. And you're risking that for me? She asked. Why? His expression shifted, something fierce and resolute settling over his features. Because some laws deserve to be broken. His thumb traced her lower lip. I don't care about council edicts anymore. Not when it comes to you. And what kind of danger are you? She asked quietly. His eyes met hers, unflinching. The worst kind. The kind you don't want to run from. They didn't sleep that night. Instead, Mara watched Rhett shift. Really shift. Not a full transformation. He had explained that those were rare, requiring extreme circumstances, but enough to see what he carried beneath the surface. He sat on the floor of the small room, stripped to the waist, muscles taut with concentration. You're sure? He asked one last time. She nodded. I need to see. He closed his eyes, jaw clenched. For a moment nothing happened, then his breathing changed, became deeper, rhythmic. His shoulders tensed, then seemed to widen. The bones beneath his skin shifted subtly, visible movement that shouldn't be possible. His hands curled, fingers extending, nails thickening into claws. His face contorted in pain as his jaw elongated slightly, teeth sharpening, canines growing. When he opened his eyes, they burned gold. Not human, not animal, something in between. Sweat beaded on his skin. A low growl built in his throat, not directed at her but at the pain of the transformation, his back arched spine realigning with audible cracks that made Mara wince. She sat beside him, silent, offering presence without judgment. Her hand hovered near his, not touching, but close. It's okay, she whispered. I'm here. His gaze fixed on her, recognition still present despite the beast that now shared his features. He didn't speak, couldn't, with his mouth partially transformed, but he nodded once. The shift lasted perhaps 15 minutes before he began to return to human form, the process just as painful in reverse. When it passed, he collapsed onto the floor beside her, fully human again, but trembling with exhaustion. She waited for his chest to stop heaving, for his pulse to steady beneath her fingers. The rawness of the change still hung in the room like smoke, tangible and electric. Only then did she guide his head into her lap, fingers combing through his sweat-dampened hair. Thank you, she said softly. He looked up at her, confusion threading through exhaustion. For what? For trusting me to see that. For not hiding. His hand found hers, squeezing weakly. Now you know. Now I know. And she ran her fingers through his hair until his breathing steadied and his trembling stopped, something fierce and protective blooming in her chest. Elsewhere in the city, Silas stood in an abandoned rail yard, the moon casting long shadows across rusted tracks and forgotten cargo containers. 2 wolves knelt at his feet, younger members of his growing pack, their shoulders still tense with the adrenaline of their earlier attack. 3 of Rhett's pack are down, one reported, voice eager for approval. What's the next move? Silas paced in front of them, boots crunching on gravel. His silver-white hair gleamed in the moonlight, his eyes reflecting gold when he turned. The council arrives tomorrow, he said. They'll want to meet with the Alpha first. Establish territory protocols, review any incidents. His lips curved into a smile. But they won't find Rhett in control of his territory. We attacking his warehouse? The second wolf asked, excitement edging his voice. No. Silas stopped pacing. We don't kill the king. His smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp for a human mouth. We kill the girl. The younger wolf frowned. The human? Why waste time on her? Silas's hand shot out, gripping the wolf's throat with casual violence, because wolves are predictable when they're in love. He released his grip, letting the wolf gasp for air. Take his heart, and you take his control. Take his control. And the council sees him as a threat, the other wolf finished. Precisely. Silas's eyes gleamed. And when he snaps, they'll beg me to end him. Back in the warehouse, Mara stirred restlessly on the narrow cot. Rhett lay beside her, arm draped across her waist. Neither slept, but they had found a quiet rhythm of breathing together in the darkness. "What if I'm the weak link?" she whispered. "You're not," he murmured, his breath warm against her neck. "I don't know how to fight. I don't heal like you. I can't shift. Then I'll teach you. To fight. To survive." She rolled to face him, hand tracing the scar near his collarbone. "You scare me sometimes." "I scare myself." He caught her hand, pressed it against his chest where his heart beat steady and strong. "But this is still human. Remember that." "And yet—" She moved closer, fitting herself against him. "I've never felt safer than when I'm with you." He kissed her gently, nothing wild, just lips against lips. Steady. Present. And she realized that being close to the flame didn't mean being burned. Sometimes it meant feeling alive. "Sleep," he said. "Tomorrow will be soon enough to face what's coming." But as she drifted toward unconsciousness, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. That somewhere in the city forces were aligning against them. That war wasn't coming. It had already begun. Morning arrived with deceptive calm. Mara stood in Rhett's private bathroom at the warehouse, examining her reflection in a cracked mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of a night without sleep. Her hair was tangled, her clothes rumpled from being slept in. But it was her eyes that had changed most, harder now, more watchful. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to center herself. Last night had altered everything. The man she'd been drawn to wasn't just a man. The story she'd been chasing wasn't just a story, and she wasn't just a journalist anymore. She heard a soft knock, then Rhett's voice. "Mara, Nina brought some clean clothes and coffee." When she emerged, he was waiting, leaning against the wall. He looked exhausted, but alert. The kind of weariness that came with perpetual vigilance. "I need to go home," she said, accepting the steaming cup he offered. "Just for a few hours, my laptop, my notes, clean clothes." His jaw tightened. "It's not safe." "Nowhere is safe." She took a sip of coffee, letting the bitter warmth fortify her. "I need an hour to get my things, file a story for my editor, and come back. I'll take your car. No one will follow me." His expression remained troubled. "Silas knows where you live. And if he's watching my place, he'll know I haven't been home." She stepped closer, voice softening. "I can't just disappear from my life, Rhett. Not yet. People will look for me." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once. "Take Liam with you. He'll stay in the car, but he'll be watching." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small matte black device about the size of a key fob. "Emergency signal. Press it if anything feels wrong." She accepted it, their fingers brushing. "I'll be back before you know it." He cupped her face, eyes fierce. "Be careful. Silas doesn't play by rules." "Neither do I," she said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The city moved at its usual frenetic pace, oblivious to the war brewing in its shadows. Mara sat in the back of Rhett's sleek black sedan, watching people walk past, normal people with normal concerns, unaware of the predators living among them. Liam, Rhett's taciturn driver and security, met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "We're about 5 minutes out. Anyone who normally has access to your building? Neighbours I should know about?" Mara shook her head. "Just the super, and he hardly ever shows up. Second-floor apartment, fire escape outside my bedroom window." Liam nodded, eyes constantly scanning. "I'll circle the block once, check for anything unusual. When we get there, go straight in, get what you need, straight back out." Her apartment building looked exactly as she'd left it, a pre-war brick structure with wrought iron details and too many shadows. Nothing appeared out of place. The morning was bright, the street relatively quiet. 15 minutes, Liam said as he pulled up to the curb. Any longer I come in? Mara nodded and stepped out of the car, squaring her shoulders as she climbed the steps to the building's entrance. Inside, the lobby was dim and silent. She took the stairs rather than the ancient elevator, alert for any sound that didn't belong. Nothing. Her apartment door was locked, undisturbed. She hesitated, key in hand, suddenly uncertain. Had she left that window slightly ajar? Was that stack of mail in the same position? She shook off the paranoia and unlocked the door, stepping inside quickly and shutting it behind her. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it, organized chaos of papers and books, laptop on the coffee table, half-empty coffee mug beside it. But something felt wrong. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a faint trace of unfamiliar cologne lingering in the still air. She moved quickly, grabbing her laptop and charger, stuffing them into her messenger bag along with notebooks and her voice recorder. She headed to her bedroom, pulled a duffel bag from her closet, and began throwing in essentials: clothes, toiletries, medication. A floorboard creaked in the hallway outside her bedroom. Mara froze. She wasn't alone. In one fluid movement, she grabbed the baseball bat she kept under her bed and pressed herself against the wall beside the door. Her heart hammered against her ribs, blood rushing in her ears. The signal device was in her pocket, but reaching for it now would make noise. A shadow moved across the crack beneath her door. The doorknob turned slowly. Mara raised the bat, knuckles white. The door swung open. A man she didn't recognize stepped in, tall, wiry, with close-cropped hair and a jagged scar bisecting his left eyebrow. His eyes widened at the empty room, then he started to turn. Mara swung. The bat connected with his shoulder instead of his head as he twisted at the last second, moving faster than humanly possible. He snarled, eyes flashing amber in the dim light, and lunged for her. She feinted left, then dove right, rolling across her bed and scrambling for the fire escape window. Behind her, the intruder recovered with unnatural speed, grabbing her ankle as she reached the window. She kicked backward, her heel connecting with his nose. Blood sprayed, but his grip only tightened. "Silas says hello," he growled, voice distorted by emerging fangs. Mara twisted, swinging the bat again with her free hand. This time it connected with his temple, and his grip loosened just enough for her to wrench free and throw herself through the window onto the fire escape. Metal rattled beneath her as she scrambled down the rusty steps, heart pounding. Above, the man roared in fury, already following. She pressed the emergency signal in her pocket as she reached the second-floor landing. A second figure appeared below, blocking her escape route. A woman with braided hair and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. Silas's pack. Trapped. Mara looked around frantically. The alley below was empty. Liam was on the street side. No help coming. The man was nearly upon her, and the woman was climbing up. Decision made, Mara vaulted over the railing, aiming for the dumpster beside the building. She hit hard, metal clanging, pain shooting up her leg as she rolled off onto the pavement. The impact stunned her, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She staggered upright, ignoring the white-hot agony in her ankle, and lunged toward the mouth of the alley. Behind her, the two wolves leapt from much higher up, landing with inhuman grace. The woman was on her in seconds, grabbing her hair and yanking her backward with savage force. "Rhett's little pet," she hissed, breath hot against Mara's ear. "Silas wants your scent. Says it'll drive your alpha mad." Mara drove her elbow back, connecting with the woman's solar plexus. The grip loosened momentarily, enough for Mara to lurch forward only to face the man blocking her path. "We were told to rough you up," he said, blood still dripping from his nose. "Not kill you. Not yet." His smile revealed teeth filed to sharp points. "But accidents happen." He lunged. Mara ducked, swinging her bag at his knees. He stumbled but recovered instantly. His hand caught her throat, lifting her off her feet. Darkness edged her vision. Her lungs burned. Then a screech of tires at the alley entrance. Liam. The wolves turned, momentarily distracted. The grip on her throat loosened, and Mara slammed her knee upward, connecting with the man's groin. He dropped her, doubling over. She crashed to the pavement, gasping for air. Gunshots. 3 in rapid succession. The wolves scattered, moving with blinding speed. Pain lanced through her ankle as she struggled upright. Her head spun, vision blurring. She tasted copper. Her lip was split. Liam appeared above her, face tight with controlled panic. "Can you walk?" Her ankle buckled beneath her weight. "No." Without hesitation, he scooped her up and carried her toward the car. "They'll be back. We need to move." As he placed her in the back seat, she saw the man across the street, an ordinary citizen who had witnessed everything, phone raised, recording. The last thing she remembered was Liam cursing as he slammed the car into gear. Then everything vanished into the silence between heartbeats. Beeping machines, antiseptic smell, harsh fluorescent lighting. Mara drifted back to consciousness in fragments, piecing together her surroundings. Hospital, private room, IV in her arm, movement by the window, a familiar silhouette. "Rhett," she whispered, throat raw. He turned, and the expression on his face stole her breath. Fury simmered beneath a mask of control. His irises had sharpened to metallic copper at the edges, his fingers flexing at his sides with barely contained violence. "Don't move," he said, voice rough. 3 broken ribs, sprained ankle, concussion. Each injury catalogued like a promise of vengeance. "Liam?" "Outside, making sure no one else gets in." She swallowed painfully. "They were waiting for me. They knew I'd come." "I know." The words were clipped, taut with barely restrained violence. The man across the street saw everything, filmed it. Rhett's jaw clenched. Andre's handling it, confiscating the phone, altering memories. Can they do that? Some can. He finally moved to her bedside, his movements controlled to the point of stiffness. "This is my fault. I should never have let you go." She reached for his hand. "It was my choice. And now you're lying in a hospital bed because I let you walk into a trap." His fingers entwined with hers, but his eyes remained distant, focused on internal calculations. "This changes everything." Silas crossed a line, attacked a human, risked exposure. "What will you do?" His gaze had that molten hue again, metallic, inhuman, seething. "Hunt them down." She tightened her grip on his hand. "Not alone. The pack won't sanction it. Not with the council arriving. They'll want to wait, strategize." His voice lowered. "I can't wait." Mara shifted upright, breath catching as pain radiated through her side. "Rhett, think. If you go after them alone, you're doing exactly what Silas wants. He's baiting you." "I know." His expression was terrifyingly calm. "But some things can't go unanswered." He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture so gentle it brought tears to her eyes, contrasting sharply with the lethal intent radiating from him. "The doctor said you'll be released tomorrow. Nina will stay with you tonight. Don't leave with anyone else. Trust no one." "Where are you going?" He was already moving toward the door. "Hunting." "Rhett!" But he was gone, leaving only the woody electric scent of an approaching storm. The monitor beside her bed beeped faster, matching the sudden acceleration of her heart. Her injuries mattered less than what she'd just seen in his eyes, a man prepared to dismantle his entire world for vengeance. The city felt different at night. Rhett moved through it like a shadow, tracking the scents of Silas's wolves. The 2 who had attacked Mara had left a trail, blood from the male's broken nose, a strand of the female's hair caught on Mara's clothing. It was enough. The trail led him north, through alleys soaked in oil and silence, into the broken ribs of the manufacturing district, territory that once belonged to his pack, now claimed by Silas. His phone vibrated in his pocket, Cassian calling for the 5th time. He ignored it. His brother would try to stop him, would remind him about the council. about the danger of exposure. Rhett didn't care. The trail led to an abandoned textile factory, its broken windows like vacant eyes in the moonlight. He caught the scent of at least 4 wolves inside, including the 2 from the alley. The hunter in him took over. No hesitation, no plan, only purpose. The first wolf never saw him coming, a young male standing guard at a side entrance. Rhett took him down silently, a blow to the back of the head that rendered him unconscious. Inside, the factory floor was vast and empty, machinery long since stripped for scrap. But a light glowed from an office at the far end, voices carrying in the cavernous space. "Should have killed her," a woman's voice said, the one from the alley. "Silas said rough her up, that's it." The male voice held a defensive edge. "You saw what happened. That driver was armed. We're exposed now. The council won't care about one human. They'll care if Rhett goes feral over her." Rhett's control slipped another notch. He felt the shift beginning, the painful stretching of tendons, the lengthening of teeth. He didn't fight it. He stepped into the open, letting them see him. 4 wolves, the man and woman from the alley plus 2 others. They froze, scenting the air, registering the threat too late. "Where's Silas?" Rhett demanded, voice rough with the partial transformation. The woman recovered first, dropping into a fighting stance. "Not here." "Then you'll have to do." What followed wasn't a fight. It was retribution. Rhett moved with lethal precision, decades of discipline channeled into controlled violence. He took down the first wolf with a sweeping kick that shattered the man's knee. The second rushed him from behind, but Rhett was already turning, claws extended, catching the attacker across the chest. The woman was faster, more skilled. She landed a blow to his side that would have felled a normal man. But Rhett was beyond pain now, operating on pure instinct. He caught her arm mid-swing, twisted, and slammed her into the concrete floor hard enough to crack it. The last wolf, the man from the alley, backed away, hands raised. "We were following orders, that's all." "So am I." Rhett advanced, his shadow elongated in the dim light. The wolf turned to run, crashing through a window in desperation, sending glass shards flying into the alley below. Rhett followed, launching himself through the broken window and landing in a crouch on the pavement. The wolf was running full tilt down the alley. He wouldn't get far. 3 strides and Rhett caught him, slamming him against the brick wall of the adjacent building. His hand closed around the wolf's throat, claws digging into flesh. "Where is Silas?" he demanded again. "I don't know," the wolf gasped. "He doesn't tell us." "Wrong answer." Rhett tightened his grip. "Please," the wolf choked out. "I have a sister. She just turned. She doesn't know control yet." He should stop. A distant part of him, the alpha, the protector, recognized the line between justice and vengeance blurring, but the beast had already tasted blood. A sound behind them, a gasp. Rhett turned, still holding the wolf by the throat, to see a woman standing frozen at the alley entrance, young, wide-eyed, phone in hand. A witness. For one crucial moment, Rhett hesitated, caught between 2 violations, letting his attacker go or being seen. The wolf seized the opportunity, twisting free and fleeing down the alley. The woman stared at Rhett, at his luminous eyes, his elongated teeth, his clawed hands. "What the hell are you?" she whispered, backing away. Rhett retracted his claws with effort, trying to pull back the shift. "Run, and don't speak a word. I saw—" She fumbled with her phone, trying to dial without looking. Rhett moved toward her, not threatening, but desperate to contain the situation. "Listen to me." She turned and ran, screaming. She vanished down the block, the recording still live in her hand. And just like that, centuries of careful secrecy began to unravel. When Mara woke again, it was past midnight. Nina sat in the chair beside her bed, flipping through a magazine with forced casualness. The woman looked up when Mara stirred, setting the magazine aside. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Mara shifted, each breath a negotiation with her broken ribs. "Like I got hit by a truck. Twice." Nina's mouth curved in a humorless smile. "That's about right. Broken ribs hurt like a bitch." Where's Rhett? Nina's expression tightened, doing something stupid. He went after them. Without council approval, without pack approval. Nina sighed, rubbing her temples. He's breaking every rule we have. Because of me, Mara said quietly. Because of what they did to you. Nina studied her face. And because Rhett Calder has spent his entire life following rules that kept him caged. Maybe he was just waiting for the right reason to break them. Before Mara could respond, Nina's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression darkening. What is it? Mara asked, pushing herself upright despite the lightning bolts of pain shooting through her torso. Exposure. Someone saw Rhett mid-shift. Nina was already on her feet, gathering her jacket. The elders are calling an emergency meeting. Is he in danger? Nina paused at the door, her face grave. We all are now. The finality in Nina's voice lingered in the empty room like a death knell. Left alone, Mara stared at the ceiling, pain medication making her thoughts fuzzy at the edges. She had started this investigation looking for a story. Now she was part of one that threatened to destroy the man she was falling for. The realization hit her with quiet clarity. She was falling for him. Rhett Calder with his amber eyes and restrained ferocity, with his loyalty and his rage, with his gentleness and his capacity for violence, and she might lose him before they'd even had a chance. Her phone lit up on the bedside table, a text message from an unknown number. He'll burn everything to keep you, the pack, the peace, himself. Will you still love the ashes? Silas. Mara deleted the message, but its echo remained. Would she? When the smoke cleared and the bodies fell, would she still want the man with the monster beneath his skin? She already knew the answer. God help her, she already knew. The safe house was nothing like Mara expected. Not a sterile concrete bunker, but a rustic cabin tucked into dense forest at the edge of the city limits. Weathered cedar shingles, a stone chimney, windows hidden behind thick foliage. The kind of place that disappeared from view the moment you looked away. Nina had driven them here in tense silence just after Mara's hospital discharge, following winding back roads that seemed designed to confuse. No one knows about this place except the inner circle, she'd said before leaving them. Not even the council. Stay here until Rhett figures out what to do about the witness. Now, as evening settled around them, Mara stood at the window watching shadows lengthen across the clearing. Her ribs ached dully beneath fresh bandages, but the painkillers had taken the edge off. The bruises on her throat had darkened to a necklace of violet and blue. Behind her, Rhett moved through the cabin, checking locks, drawing curtains, prowling the perimeter with restless energy. He'd barely spoken since their arrival, his face locked in an expression of grim determination. You should sit, she said, breaking the silence. You haven't stopped moving since we got here. He paused, shoulders rigid beneath his black Henley. I need to be sure we're secure. We are. She crossed to him, stopping just short of touching. Nina wouldn't have left us if we weren't. Something fractured in his expression, a hairline crack in perfect control. You were nearly killed because of me. I was attacked because of Silas, she corrected. There's a difference. Not to me. His voice was granite, but his eyes were wounded. Everything changed the moment I let you walk into your apartment alone. I chose to go. And I chose to let you. The dying light filtered through curtains, casting his face in gold and shadow. She studied him, the rigid set of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands flexed and unfisted at his sides. He was holding himself together by sheer will, she realized, containing the rage, the fear, the beast beneath his skin. Rhett, she said his name quietly. Look at me. His eyes met hers, copper rimmed with amber, barely human. I'm still here, she said. I'm right here. Something shifted in his expression, a tectonic movement beneath rigid control. He lifted his hand, hesitated, then traced the bruises on her throat with feather-light fingertips. I can smell them on you, he said, voice dropping to a register that vibrated through her bones. Their hands on your skin. Your fear. Your pain. His fingers drifted to her temple where a butterfly bandage closed a small cut. I can smell your blood. And what does that do to you? She asked, not retreating, not afraid. His eyes darkened. It makes me want to hunt. But you're here instead. I'm here, he agreed, dropping his hand, because the council is looking for me, because I exposed us, because I let that woman film evidence of what we are. Self-condemnation edged each word. Mara moved closer, invading his carefully maintained distance. You're here because I asked you to be. That too. His admission was soft, almost imperceptible. She reached for him, resting her palm against his chest. Beneath her fingers, his heart hammered. Too fast, too hard, unnatural. The wolf straining against human constraints. You're burning up, she said, feeling heat radiate through the thin fabric of his shirt. It's the moon. His voice roughened. 3 days until it's full. Makes the blood run hot. Makes control difficult. She didn't withdraw her hand. Is that why you've been keeping your distance? Because control is difficult? His laugh was sharp, humorless. I've been keeping my distance because every time I get close to you, something in me wants to destroy everything that isn't us. The confession hung between them, raw and irrevocable. He stepped back, creating space, and ran a hand through his hair. You should rest, he said, voice deliberately even. I'll take the couch. Mara watched him retreat, erecting walls between them with practiced precision. She'd spent a career tearing down walls, extracting truths people didn't want to reveal. She knew deflection when she saw it. Why did you agree to bring me here? She asked. He stopped, back to her. You weren't safe at the hospital, or your apartment. That's not what I meant. She moved toward him, each step deliberate despite the pain in her ankle. You could have sent me with Nina, or Liam, or anyone else in your pack. Why are you here, Rhett? He turned, and the expression on his face stole her breath, hunger barely contained, need barely leashed. You know why. I want to hear you say it. For a moment she thought he would deflect again, retreat behind alpha stoicism. Instead, he closed the distance between them with 2 swift strides. Because I can't stand the thought of you being anywhere I'm not, he said, voice pitched low. Because every instinct I have tells me to keep you close, keep you safe, make you mine. Because since the moment you walked into my club asking questions about dead bodies, something in me has been clawing to get out, something that recognizes you. His breath hitched. Because I'm terrified of what will happen if I let myself have this. Have what? She whispered. You. He lifted his hand to her face, cupping her jaw. Us. Whatever this is between us that neither of us asked for, but can't seem to escape. Heat bloomed where he touched her, spreading across her skin like wildfire. She leaned into his palm, pulse racing. What if I don't want to escape it? His thumb traced her lower lip. You should. I'm not just a man, Mara. What I am, what my kind are, we live with violence in our blood. The people around us get caught in the crossfire. Look what's already happened to you. I've spent my career chasing danger, she said. This isn't the first time I've been hurt for a story. This isn't a story anymore. His voice roughened. This is your life. Our lives, she corrected. I'm already involved, Rhett. Already in danger. Already exposed. The only difference now is deciding whether we face it together or apart. Something shifted in his eyes. Resignation, acceptance, surrender. His hand slid to the nape of her neck, thumb tracing the thundering pulse in her throat. There's no going back from this, he warned. She lifted her chin. I don't want to go back. For a heartbeat, he remained perfectly still, searching her face for doubt, for fear. Finding none, he closed the final distance between them. His lips met hers with restrained hunger, a gentle fierceness that stole her breath. She rose on her toes, ignoring the twinge in her ankle, and slid her hands up his chest to his shoulders. Beneath her palms, his muscles trembled with tension, with effort, holding back, holding something in. "Don't," she whispered against his mouth. "Don't hide from me." The words broke something loose in him. His arms encircled her, drawing her against him with careful force, mindful of her injuries even as his control frayed. His kiss deepened, a claiming, a confession, a question she answered by parting her lips beneath his. Heat flared between them, electric and primal, his hands tangled in her hair, angling her face to deepen the kiss. She tasted coffee and cedar and something wild, untamed, the taste of Rhett stripped of pretense, of alpha reserve. When they broke apart, both breathless, his eyes had changed, amber bleeding into the copper, pupils elongated into something feral. Evidence of how close to the surface his other nature prowled. "I want to see you," she said, voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. "All of you. No more hiding." His throat worked as he swallowed. "You don't know what you're asking." "I do." She reached up, tracing the sharp edge of his cheekbone with her fingertips. "I've seen glimpses, Rhett. I want to know the whole truth." For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then, with methodical grace, he stepped back and pulled his Henley over his head. The sight stole her breath. His torso was a road map of old battles. Silver scars crisscrossing tanned skin, evidence of fights and challenges survived. But what caught her attention was the tattoo sprawling across his left pectoral, an intricate rendering of a wolf's head composed of ancient symbols she didn't recognize. "Pack markings," he explained, watching her eyes track the design. "The history of my bloodline, my place in the hierarchy. Every alpha wears one." She stepped closer, fingertips hovering over a particularly vicious scar that curved from his collarbone to his sternum. "And this?" "Challenge for dominance. 10 years ago." His voice was rough. "I wasn't meant to survive it." Her palm flattened against his chest, feeling the unnatural heat of his skin, the rapid drumming of his heart. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me what you are." His jaw tightened. "It's not something I can control entirely, not with the moon so close." "I'm not afraid." "You should be." "But I'm not." A small, rueful smile touched his lips. "Stubborn," he murmured, as if it were both accusation and endearment. He closed his eyes, features tightening in concentration. Beneath her palm, his skin grew hotter, almost feverish. The tendons in his neck strained, muscles rippling beneath skin, suddenly slick with sweat. When he opened his eyes, they blazed like molten gold, inhuman, predatory, ancient. Canines lengthened, pressing against his lower lip. The hands that came up to cradle her face bore claws, razor-sharp and lethal, yet they touched her with heartbreaking gentleness. "This is what I am," he said, voice an octave deeper, vibrating with something primal. "Caught between worlds, neither fully human nor fully beast." She didn't flinch, didn't retreat. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that acknowledged his revelation. Accepted it. Embraced it. He groaned against her mouth, a sound more animal than human, and gathered her to him. This time his kiss held nothing back. It was possession and hunger and need laid bare. His arms encircled her, lifting her as if she weighed nothing and carried her to the bedroom. What followed was a revelation in sensation. They moved with primal rhythm, bodies speaking a language older than thought. Each touch was a question, each response an answer. The weight of him above her felt like sanctuary rather than confinement. His warmth melted the hospital's ghosts from her skin. Through it all, he held her gaze, amber eyes never leaving hers, as if he needed to see her, to know her, to memorize every expression that crossed her face. "Stay with me," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "Stay here, in this moment." And she did, anchored to him as the world dissolved into heat and sensation, and the knowledge that something irrevocable was happening between them. Something that couldn't be undone or forgotten or walked away from. After, they lay tangled in sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. Night wrapped the cabin in silence and shadow. The only sound was their gradually slowing breath and the distant call of an owl. "I've never shown anyone," he said quietly. "Not like that. Not willingly." She pressed her lips to the center of his chest. "Thank you for trusting me." His arms tightened around her. "It terrifies me," he admitted, voice barely audible. "Caring for someone who can be hurt, someone mortal. The people in my world, we heal. We survive things that would kill a human. But you," his voice caught, "you're so fragile in comparison." She lifted her head to look at him. "I'm not fragile, Rhett. You have broken ribs that say otherwise." "I survived," she pointed out. "I fought. I'm still here." He traced the bruises on her throat with gentle fingers. "This time, every time," she said with quiet conviction. "I choose this. I choose you. Whatever comes with that choice." His expression turned solemn. "The council will arrive tomorrow. Once they know about the witness, about the recording, they'll want to contain the situation. If they can't..." He let the sentence hang unfinished. "If they can't, what? They might decide I'm a liability. That you're a liability." His eyes met hers, unflinching. "They won't just see you as a human who knows too much. They'll see you as proof we can fall for outsiders. That terrifies them more than any witness." She absorbed this without visible reaction. "And if they do? We run. Together?" "Together," he confirmed. "If you're willing." She placed her palm against his cheek, feeling the stubble beneath her fingers, the heat of his skin. "If you're hunted, I run with you." Rhett's eyes closed, as if her words carved open a place he never meant to show. In the distance, a wolf howled, a lonely warning against the silence of fate. The message came at dawn. Mara woke to the sound of Rhett's phone vibrating against the bedside table. Through half-closed eyes, she watched him read the text, his body tensing beside her, the warmth of last night's intimacy evaporating in an instant. "What is it?" she asked, voice still rough with sleep. He sat up, the sheets pooling at his waist, revealing the constellation of scars across his torso. In the pale morning light, his face had hardened into something ancient and unforgiving. "Silas is calling for blood challenge." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with significance she didn't fully understand but could feel in the sudden electric tension radiating from him. "What does that mean?" she asked, though some primal part of her already knew the answer. "It means he's demanding formal combat. Alpha against alpha," Rhett's voice flattened. "To the death." Mara pushed herself upright, wincing at the pull of her injured ribs. "He can't seriously expect—" "He can and he does." Rhett swung his legs over the side of the bed, spine straight like a soldier awaiting the dawn. "By pack law, I have to accept. Or what? Or I lose everything, my position, my territory, my pack." He glanced back at her, eyes flaring amber in the dim light. "You." She reached for him, fingers brushing his spine. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." He moved to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains at the forest beyond. "This was always coming. Silas has been circling for years, waiting for me to make a mistake. Now I have. The witness. The witness. The attack on you, my retaliation." His shoulders tensed beneath his skin. "I broke protocol, acted without council approval. It's all the excuse he needs." "So, what happens now?" "The challenge takes place tonight. Neutral ground." He met her gaze. "The old subway tunnels beneath the river district. 8 o'clock." She studied his face, searching for fear, for doubt, finding only resolution etched in stone. "And you're going to fight him?" It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Yes." "Could you die?" The bluntness of her question seemed to surprise him. For a moment his expression softened. "Anyone can die, Mara. Even us." He crossed back to the bed, sitting beside her. "But I don't plan to." She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. Promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll come back to me. His eyes met hers, human again, vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. I promise. By sunset, the safe house had transformed into a war room. Nina arrived first, bringing weapons, silver-edged knives that made Rhett wince when he handled them, oddly shaped restraints Mara couldn't identify. Andre followed shortly after, carrying ancient-looking scrolls and a small wooden box inlaid with bone. The challenge texts, he explained when he caught Mara watching. Rules and rituals dating back centuries. This happens often? She asked. Less than it used to. Most alphas prefer politics to bloodshed these days. Andre's gaze flicked to Rhett, who was conferring with Nina in low, urgent tones. Silas is old school. Believes power should be taken, not negotiated. And Rhett? Rhett believes in protecting what's his. Andre unrolled one of the scrolls, which is why we're going to make sure he's prepared. For the next hour, they pored over battle strategies and pack histories. Mara watched as they mapped Silas's known fighting patterns, his weaknesses, his tendencies in previous challenges. It was methodical, tactical, more military briefing than supernatural ritual. His left side is vulnerable, Nina noted, sketching a diagram. Old injury that never healed right. He compensates with speed, but if you can pin him... I know his weaknesses, Rhett interrupted. I've been watching him for years. Knowing and exploiting are different things, Andre countered. You can't hesitate, not with Silas. I won't. The cabin door opened, admitting a blast of cold air and the last person Mara expected to see, Cassian, Rhett's brother, his face set in grim lines. The room fell silent. Didn't think you'd come, Rhett said finally. Cassian closed the door behind him. You're my brother. That didn't seem to matter when the council was questioning you about my actions. I told them what they needed to hear. Cassian stepped further into the room. Doesn't mean I won't stand with you now. Something silent passed between the brothers. History, betrayal, blood ties too deep to sever completely. After a tense moment, Rhett nodded once. I'll need seconds, he said. 3 of them. I'm in, Nina said immediately. Me too, added Andre. Cassian's jaw tightened. And me. Rhett held his brother's gaze for a long moment, then nodded again. Good. Then let's finish this. As the others returned to their preparations, Cassian approached Mara, lowering his voice. Has he eaten? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. He needs to. Raw protein, before the fight. Cassian's eyes were the same copper as his brother's, but colder, more calculating. Make him eat something. He won't listen to me. Before she could respond, he moved away, joining the others at the table. Mara watched him go, struck by the contradiction. The brother who'd apparently betrayed Rhett to the council, now insisting on caring for his basic needs. When she brought Rhett a plate of barely seared steak from the cabin's supplies, he raised an eyebrow. Cassian's idea, she explained. To her surprise, Rhett accepted the plate without argument. He always was the practical one. Is that why you're letting him be your second? Practicality? Rhett took a bite, chewing slowly. No. I'm letting him be my second because if I die, the pack needs a leader they'll follow. That's Cassian. The casual way he mentioned his potential death sent ice through her veins. You're not going to die. He reached for her hand, pressing his lips to her knuckles. His mouth was warm, slightly red from the rare meat. No, he agreed. I'm not. The abandoned subway tunnel yawned before them like the throat of some ancient beast. Mara stood at the entrance, shivering despite her heavy coat. The night air carried an edge of frost, condensing her breath into small, ghostly clouds. Around her, wolves gathered in silent groups, Rhett's pack on one side, Silas's on the other, with a small contingent of black-clad figures she assumed were council representatives stationed between. Whatever happens down there, don't interfere, Nina murmured beside her. The council will execute both alphas if anyone breaks the sacred boundary. No exceptions. Mara swallowed hard. That seems extreme. It ensures the challenge remains pure, A test of strength and will alone. Nina nodded toward the council members. They've maintained these laws for centuries. A tall, elderly man stepped forward from the council group, raising his hands. The gathered wolves fell silent. "The blood challenge has been called," he announced, voice echoing against stone. "Silas Blackwood against Rhett Calder. Alpha against Alpha. Let the challengers approach." From opposite sides of the gathering, Rhett and Silas emerged. Both had stripped to the waist despite the cold, revealing physiques honed by years of combat. Where Rhett was all lean muscle and precise control, Silas was broader, heavier, his chest and arms marked with ritual scarification that stood out against his pale skin. They approached the elder, stopping several feet apart. "The terms of challenge are these," the elder continued. "Combat continues until submission or death. No outside interference. No weapons beyond what nature has provided." He gestured to the tunnel entrance. "The sacred ground has been prepared. Once you enter, you fight as wolves have fought since the beginning. Without mercy, without restraint." The elder turned to Silas. "Challenger, do you accept these terms?" Silas's lips curved in a predatory smile. "I do." "Defender, do you accept these terms?" Rhett's eyes found Mara's in the crowd, holding her gaze for one heartbeat. "Two." "I do." "Then let the challenge begin. May the strongest wolf prevail." The gathered packs formed a silent procession, following the combatants into the tunnel. Mara found herself swept along, Nina's hand firm on her elbow, guiding her. The tunnel opened into a vast circular chamber, the remains of an abandoned station platform, its ceiling partially collapsed to reveal a slice of night sky above. Flaming torches had been placed at intervals around the space, casting dancing shadows across crumbling concrete and rusted tracks. In the center, a circle had been marked out, with a substance that gleamed silver in the firelight. "Mountain ash and silver nitrate," Nina whispered, noticing Mara's questioning glance. "It defines the combat zone. Neither challenger can cross it until the fight is decided." The wolves arranged themselves around the circle, Rhett's pack on one side, Silas's on the other. The council took positions at equal distances around the perimeter, their black robes making them seem like shadows come to life. Mara found herself positioned between Nina and Andre, with Cassian standing rigidly a few feet away. His face was expressionless, but his hands were clenched at his sides, knuckles white. Rhett and Silas stood at opposite edges of the circle, facing each other across the empty space. The elder raised his hand once more. "Begin." What happened next seared itself into Mara's memory with traumatic clarity. Both men changed, not fully into wolves, but into something between human and beast. Bones shifted beneath skin, muscles contorted, faces elongated into partial muzzles. Their hands sprouted claws, their teeth lengthened into fangs. It was horrifying and mesmerizing, this transformation that wasn't magic but biology pushed to impossible extremes. Then they charged. The collision was thunderous, muscle against muscle, bone against bone. They grappled in the center of the circle, snarling and slashing. Blood sprayed across the concrete as claws found purchase. Silas was stronger, leveraging his greater mass to drive Rhett backward. But Rhett was faster, twisting out of his grip, countering with precision strikes to vulnerable points. Around them, the wolves watched in silence, broken only by occasional growls of approval or dismay. Mara felt sick, terrified, yet unable to look away. This was Rhett as she'd never seen him, primal, vicious, every movement calculated to maim or kill. Silas landed a savage blow to Rhett's ribs, sending him staggering. "I've waited years for this," he snarled, voice distorted by his partially shifted face. "The great Rhett Calder, brought low by a human female." Rhett spat blood circling. "Is that what this is about? Jealousy? You brought a human into our blood. You poisoned the line." Silas lunged again, missing as Rhett sidestepped. "You've made us vulnerable." They crashed together again, rolling across the circle in a blur of claws and fangs. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs, pain forgotten in the rush of adrenaline. Beside her, Nina watched with professional detachment, but her fingers dug into her own arms hard enough to draw blood. The fight shifted, momentum changing hands like a tide. For several minutes, Silas gained the upper hand, pinning Rhett beneath his greater weight, claws raking furrows across his chest. Blood pooled beneath them, and Mara bit her lip until she tasted copper to keep from crying out. Then Rhett twisted, somehow leveraging Silas's momentum against him, and suddenly the other alpha was airborne, crashing into the ground at the edge of the circle. Rhett was on him in an instant, claws at his throat. But Silas wasn't finished. With a roar that shook dust from the ceiling, he surged upward, catching Rhett's arm in his jaws. The crack of bone was audible even over the snarls. Rhett howled in pain but didn't retreat, instead driving his knee into Silas's sternum with crushing force. They separated, circling again, both bleeding heavily now. Rhett's left arm hung at an awkward angle, clearly broken. Silas limped, favouring his right leg where Rhett's claws had torn through muscle. "You can't win," Silas taunted, circling. "The woman has weakened you." "She's made me something you'll never understand." Rhett's voice was a guttural rasp. "Something worth fighting for." They collided again, this time with Rhett driving forward despite his injury, moving with blinding speed. His right hand found Silas's throat, claws digging in as he forced the larger wolf backward. Silas struck back, but his blows seemed to have no effect. Rhett drove him to the ground, pinning him with inexorable force. "Yield!" Rhett growled. Silas's response was to surge upward, teeth snapping for Rhett's throat, but Rhett was ready. In one fluid motion, he shifted his weight and drove his claws deep into Silas's side, precisely where Nina had indicated his old injury lay. Silas howled in agony. Blood gushed, darker than human blood, thicker. "Yield!" Rhett demanded again. "Never!" Silas gasped. With his remaining strength, he reached up, not for Rhett, but for something at his own waist. A blade flashed in the torchlight, a hidden weapon, violating the sacred rules. "Rhett!" Cassian's voice cut through the chamber. What happened next blurred into chaos. Cassian vaulted into the circle, breaking the boundary, moving with impossible speed to intercept the blade meant for his brother's heart. The silver edge caught him across the chest instead, laying open a wound that immediately began to smoke. Rhett roared, not in pain but in fury. His hand closed around Silas's wrist, snapping it with a wet crack. The blade clattered to the ground. With his other hand, he drove his claws into Silas's throat, tearing through flesh and sinew until the struggling stopped. Silence descended, broken only by harsh breathing and the soft hiss of Cassian's wound cauterizing from the silver. The elder stepped forward. "The challenge is decided. Rhett Calder stands victorious." His eyes moved to Cassian, then to Silas's corpse. "However, there have been violations." "The only violation was his," Rhett interrupted, voice raw. He gestured to the fallen blade. "Silver, hidden, he broke the sacred law." "And your brother broke the boundary," countered one of the other council members. "To prevent further violation, to maintain the integrity of the challenge." Rhett straightened, still holding his broken arm close to his body. Blood streaked his torso, but he stood tall, every inch the alpha. "Unless the council suggests I should have died to a cheater's blade for the sake of tradition." The elders conferred briefly, then the leader nodded. "The challenge stands. The victory is yours, Alpha Calder. Silas Blackwood's pack now falls under your authority to absorb or disperse as you see fit." Rhett nodded once, then turned to his brother. Cassian was still on his knees, one hand pressed to the smoking wound across his chest. Without hesitation, Rhett knelt beside him. "That was stupid," he said, but his voice held no anger. Cassian managed a pained smile. "Learned from the best." Around them, the gathered wolves began to disperse, the council members collecting Silas's body, the opposing pack retreating in defeat. Nina signaled to Mara that it was safe to approach. She crossed to where Rhett and Cassian knelt, her legs unsteady beneath her. Both men looked up as she approached. One her lover, one his brother, both bloodied and wounded in her defense. "I told you I'd return," Rhett said, reaching for her hand with his uninjured arm. She took it, feeling the tacky warmth of blood against her skin. "You did." Her eyes moved to Cassian. "Thank you." Cassian looked surprised, then nodded once. "He's my brother," he said simply, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. As they helped each other up, supporting each other's weight, Mara understood what she was witnessing, the unbreakable bond of pack, of family, of loyalty that transcended disagreement and betrayal. The cost of this life was high, written in blood and pain. But so was its value, measured in the willingness to die for one another. Rhett caught her gaze, reading her thoughts with uncanny precision. "You're still here," he said quietly. She looked at him, blood-spattered, injured, victorious, and felt her heart swell with a complexity of emotions she couldn't name. Fear, yes. Horror at what she'd witnessed. But also certainty. "Where else would I be?" she confirmed. Together they made their way out of the tunnel, leaving death behind them and carrying new life forward. A pack reunited, brothers reconciled, and a human woman who had chosen to run with wolves. The aftermath of violence was quieter than Mara expected. Dawn found her sitting beside Rhett in the safe house's small kitchen, watching as Nina wrapped his broken arm in a specialized cast. The break was clean, a simple fracture that would heal within days, not weeks. Werewolf biology, Mara was learning, operated by different rules. "You're lucky," Nina said, securing the last bandage. "Silas could have shattered it." Rhett's face remained impassive, though Mara caught the slight tightening around his eyes when Nina adjusted the splint. Luck had nothing to do with it. "Pride, then." Nina packed away her supplies. "At least the rest of your injuries are already healing." The lacerations across his chest had stopped bleeding hours ago, the edges already knitting together. By evening, Nina had explained, they would be little more than pink lines. By tomorrow, not even that. "And Cassian?" Rhett asked. "Silver takes longer." Nina's expression softened slightly. "But he'll recover. Andre's with him now." When Nina left to check on Cassian, silence settled between Mara and Rhett. Outside, the forest was coming alive with morning sounds, birds calling, wind rustling through evergreens, the distant sound of a stream swollen with spring runoff. "So what happens now?" Mara finally asked. Rhett studied his bandaged arm. "Now I deal with the council." "Because of me?" His eyes lifted to hers. "Because of what I've done, because of what Silas revealed." "The witness, the video?" "Yes." He shifted, wincing slightly. "There are protocols for handling exposure. I violated all of them." "To protect me?" "To protect you." He didn't deny it, didn't try to reframe it. "And I'd do it again." She reached across the table, careful of his injuries, and took his hand. "Tell me what we're facing." "Best case? The council accepts Silas's challenge as an internal matter, settled through proper channels. They handle the witness, suppress the video, and leave us to rebuild." His fingers tightened around hers. "Worst case? They decide I'm compromised, that my judgment can't be trusted with a human in the equation." "What would that mean?" "They'd strip me of alpha status, possibly exile me from pack territories." His voice remained level, but she felt the tension in his grip. "Or they'd demand I sever all ties with you." The implication hung between them, heavy as stone. "They'd make you choose between me and your pack," she said quietly. "They would try." Before she could respond, the safe house door opened. Cassian entered, moving stiffly, a thick bandage visible beneath his partially buttoned shirt. Behind him came Andre and 3 others Mara recognized from Rhett's inner circle, his most trusted lieutenants. "They're here," Cassian said without preamble. Rhett nodded, unsurprised. "How many?" 5. The elder and 4 representatives. Cassian glanced at Mara. "They've requested a formal audience, pack leaders only." Mara felt Rhett's hand tighten briefly on hers before he released it, pushing to his feet. Where? The clearing to the east. 10 minutes. Cassian's expression was unreadable. They've specified that the human shouldn't be present. Her name is Mara, Rhett said quietly. And she stays where I can see her. Cassian's gaze flickered between them. They won't like it. I didn't ask what they'd like. For a moment, something like approval crossed Cassian's face. I'll tell them you're on your way. After he left, Rhett turned to Mara. Stay with Nina. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, don't interfere. I won't, she stood, facing him. But don't sacrifice your position for me. Your pack needs you. He touched her cheek. A fleeting gesture. I've made my choice. From the edge of the tree line, Mara watched the council's arrival. They came not in the black robes of the challenge, but in modern business attire. 3 men and 2 women, all carrying themselves with the unmistakable authority of power. Only the elder from the night before maintained any air of ceremony, his silver hair and patrician features lending him a timeless quality. Nina stood beside Mara, alert and watchful. The one on the left is Eliza Thornton, she murmured. Old bloodline, conservative faction. The tall man is Marcus Webb. Less traditional but strict about exposure protocols. The others are representatives from neighbouring territories. And the elder? Frederick Kincaid, head of the North American Council. He rarely leaves the main compound. His presence means this is serious. Mara watched as Rhett approached the gathering, Cassian and Andre flanking him. Despite his injuries, he moved with fluid confidence, head high and stance solid, every inch the alpha defending his territory. The contrast between his casual clothing and the council's formal attire only emphasized the difference in their worlds. The wind carried fragments of conversation to where Mara stood. Highly irregular procedure. Breach of security protocols. Unknown witness with video evidence. Rhett's responses were too low to hear, but his posture remained unwavering. At one point, Elder Kincaid gestured in Mara's direction, his expression stern. Rhett's response was immediate and clearly negative. The tension in the clearing became palpable, even from a distance. This isn't going well, Nina murmured. What are they saying? They want you gone. Nina's bluntness was not unkind, merely factual. Removed from Rhett's life, from pack knowledge, they're offering to handle your memories, make you forget all of this. Cold washed through Mara. They can do that? There are ways, not magic, but close enough. Compounds derived from certain plants, administered properly. Ancient science we've kept hidden. The discussion in the clearing had intensified. Cassian had stepped forward now, standing shoulder to shoulder with his brother. Their united front seemed to give the council pause. What's happening now? Mara asked. Cassian is backing Rhett's position. It's significant. The brothers haven't presented a united front in years. The council can't easily dismiss both of them. Nina's voice held a note of surprise. He's reminding them that Silas broke sacred law first. As they watched, Elder Kincaid raised his hand, silencing the discussion. He spoke at length, his bearing formal, almost judicial. When he finished, he extended his hand to Rhett. After a moment's hesitation, Rhett clasped it. They've reached an agreement, Nina said, tension easing from her posture. Not ideal from their expressions, but not exile either. As the council prepared to leave, Mara noticed Eliza Thornton lingering. The severe-looking woman leaned close to Rhett, her finger jabbing toward Mara's position in the trees. Even from a distance, the warning in her posture was unmistakable. The council members departed shortly after, leaving Rhett, Cassian, and Andre in the clearing. When Rhett turned toward the tree line, his eyes found Mara immediately, as if he'd known exactly where she was all along. He nodded once, a clear invitation to approach. She crossed the open space with Nina at her side, uncertainty mingling with determination. Whatever verdict had been rendered, she would face it without flinching. Well? Nina asked as they reached the men. The council has granted a conditional reprieve, Rhett said. His voice betrayed nothing, but Mara could read tension in the set of his jaw. They're handling the witness and the video evidence. In exchange, I've agreed to certain stipulations. What stipulations? Mara asked. Rhett's eyes met hers. You're to have no contact with the press regarding our kind. No articles, no exposés, no anonymous tips. Your knowledge remains strictly within pack boundaries. The journalist in her bristled reflexively, but she nodded. That's reasonable. What else? You'll need to be formally introduced to the council within 30 days. They want to evaluate you. Something in his tone made her uneasy. Evaluate how? Cassian answered when Rhett didn't. They want to ensure you're trustworthy, that your presence won't endanger the packs. And if they decide I'm not trustworthy? They won't, Rhett said firmly. But if they do? The silence that followed was answer enough. Thornton made it clear, Andre added quietly. She has influence with the more conservative factions. She'll be watching for any mistake. Mara took a deep breath. I see. She straightened, decision crystallizing. Then I should leave now, before this goes any further. Rhett's head snapped up. What? It's the logical solution. I leave, go back to my life, pretend none of this happened. Each word cost her, but she forced them out. Your position remains secure, your pack safe. No. The word fell like stone. Rhett. No, he repeated, stepping closer. Running isn't an option. It's the safest option. For everyone. Especially you. She met his gaze steadily. I won't be the reason you lose everything you've built. You're not hearing me, Mara. He took her hands, his grip firm despite his injured arm. I'm not letting you walk away for my benefit. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? Because from where I'm standing, I'm a liability. To you, to your pack, to your entire species. A muscle worked in his jaw. You're more than that. You're... He broke off, struggling with words that didn't come easily to him. You're part of me now, he finally said, voice rough. And I don't surrender what's mine. The intensity of his claim should have offended her independent nature. Instead, it resonated somewhere deep and primal, an answering chord to something she'd felt since the moment they met. The council might not see it that way, she said quietly. The council doesn't dictate who I stand with. His eyes never left hers. That right belongs to me alone, and to you. Cassian cleared his throat. The cabin is secure for now. I suggest we continue this discussion there. Rhett nodded, not releasing Mara's hands. Nina, Andre, spread the word. The pack assembles tonight. It's time they understood what we're facing. The cabin felt smaller with 6 people crowded into its main room. Rhett stood by the fireplace, the flames casting his face in sharp relief. Cassian leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed, expression watchful. Nina and Andre sat at the small table, while Liam, newly arrived and still uncertain of his place in this inner circle, hovered near the door. Mara sat on the couch, feeling both central to the discussion and strangely outside it. The council has given us 30 days, Rhett said. 30 days to integrate Mara, to prove her presence strengthens rather than weakens us. After that, they'll make their final judgment. And if they rule against her, Liam asked. They won't, Rhett said flatly. But if they do, Liam persisted. Rhett's gaze travelled the room, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. Then we handle it. As a pack. The implication hung in the air, defiance of the council itself. Mara felt the weight of it, the enormity of what Rhett was suggesting. There's another option, she said quietly. All eyes turned to her. I could leave now, go somewhere else, start over. You could tell the council I'm no longer a factor. No. The word came not from Rhett, but from Nina. She leaned forward, eyes intense. That's not how pack works. I'm not pack, Mara pointed out. You are to him. Nina nodded toward Rhett. That makes you pack to us. Whether we like it or not, she added with the ghost of a smile. Cassian straightened from the wall. Nina's right. Running solves nothing. The council would know. They'd view it as confirmation of their suspicions. Then what's the alternative? Mara asked. Because I won't be the reason Rhett loses everything. I've already told you, Rhett said quietly. I stand with you, whatever comes of that decision. Liam shifted uncomfortably. The pack might not all feel the same. Some were loyal to Silas. Some have never accepted a human knowing about us. Then they can leave. Rhett's voice carried absolute authority. This isn't a democracy, it's a pack. My pack. And my decision is final. The room fell silent. Mara looked around at these people, these wolves in human form, who were prepared to defy their own governing body for her sake. For Rhett's sake. The realization was humbling, terrifying, and somehow exhilarating. I have something to say, she said, rising to her feet. All eyes turned to her again. I understand what's at stake here. I know what you all risk by keeping me close. She took a deep breath. If I stay, it's not as an outsider looking in, not as a journalist with a story, but as someone committed to protecting what you are. She crossed to her laptop, which sat on a side table. Opening it, she navigated to her draft folder and pulled up the article she'd been working on for weeks, the exposé that had started this journey. Without hesitation, she selected all text and deleted it. My resignation letter is already drafted, she said, turning back to the room. By morning, I'll no longer be a journalist. The silence that followed was profound. Then Rhett was beside her, his uninjured hand cupping her face. You love your work, he said softly. Your career. I won't ask you to give that up. You didn't ask. She covered his hand with hers. I decided. Just like you decided to stand against protocol. Just like Cassian decided to stand with you when it mattered. Her voice steadied. That's what makes us human, isn't it? The boundaries we draw. The decisions that define us when everything else is stripped away. Something shifted in Rhett's expression. Wonder, perhaps, or recognition. Yes, he said simply. That's exactly what makes us human. From across the room, Cassian spoke. The pack meeting tonight. Bring her. Rhett's eyebrows rose. I'm suggesting it's time they met her properly, not as a journalist. Not as a human who knows too much, but as yours. Cassian pushed away from the wall, authority settling over him like a mantle. If she's to be part of this pack, they need to see her stand beside you. Rhett studied his brother for a long moment, then nodded. Tonight, then. The pack gathered in a clearing 1/2 a mile from the cabin, 40 strong and growing as Silas's former followers trickled in. They formed a loose circle around a central fire, faces illuminated by flames, eyes reflective in the darkness, not fully human, not in this space where they could be themselves without fear. Mara stood at the edge watching Rhett move among them. Despite his injuries, he carried himself with undiminished authority, speaking to each group, each individual, reassuring, commanding, connecting. This was the alpha at work, she realized, not through domination but through relationship. Nina appeared at her side. Nervous? Should I be? A little. They're wary of outsiders. Nina's smile was slight but genuine. But they respect strength, and standing up to the council takes strength. I didn't stand up to anyone, I just refused to run. Same thing in their eyes. Nina nodded toward the fire. He's ready for you. Rhett had taken position by the fire, Cassian at his right hand. The gathered wolves had fallen silent, waiting. Taking a deep breath, Mara walked forward, feeling dozens of eyes track her progress. She took her place at Rhett's left side. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. You know what happened at the challenge, he began, voice carrying easily through the night. Silas is dead. His pack is now under our protection, our guidance. But the challenge revealed something else, something many of you have already sensed. He lifted their joined hands slightly. This woman is mine, as I am hers. The council has concerns about this. Some of you may share those concerns. Murmurs rippled through the gathering, neither clearly supportive nor hostile. Hear me, Rhett continued. For generations we've hidden, lived in shadows. built walls between ourselves and the human world. It has kept us safe, but at a cost. Isolation, suspicion, fear. He looked around the circle, meeting eyes that gleamed amber in the firelight. I'm not suggesting we expose ourselves. I'm suggesting we evolve. Find new ways to coexist. New strengths in connection rather than separation. The council won't accept that, someone called from the back. They'll move against you, against all of us. The council serves the packs, not the other way around, Rhett responded. And I am still alpha here. I've proven that. And the human. Another voice, skeptical but not hostile. How do we know she can be trusted? Mara felt dozens of eyes shift to her. This was the moment, the test that mattered more than any council evaluation. Gently extracting her hand from Rhett's, she stepped forward. You don't know me, she acknowledged. You have no reason to trust me, but I've seen what you are. I've witnessed your strength, your loyalty, your capacity for both violence and protection. She met the gaze of the wolf who had questioned her. I've deleted my story, resigned from my position, not because Rhett asked me to, but because I choose to protect what matters. She looked around the circle at faces both familiar and strange. I don't ask to be pack. I know I'm not one of you, but I ask for the chance to prove I can be trusted with what you are. Silence greeted her words. Then, from the opposite side of the fire, Cassian spoke. She stood with Rhett when Silas's men came for her. She didn't run, didn't break when they hurt her. His voice carried authority second only to Rhett's. She's earned the right to try. More silence. Then Nina stepped forward. I stand with her. As do I, said Andre. One by one, others joined. Liam, several of Rhett's lieutenants, even a few from Silas's former pack. Not all, not even most, but enough. A beginning. Rhett moved to stand beside Mara again, his presence solid and reassuring. The council has given us 30 days, he told the gathered wolves. In that time, we show them a new way forward. Not humans and wolves, but a pack that includes both, stronger together than apart. As the meeting dispersed, wolves departing in small groups, Mara felt something settle within her, a certainty that hadn't been there before. This wouldn't be easy. The council might still rule against them. Parts of the pack might never accept her. But here, tonight, something new had begun. Rhett's arm encircled her waist as they walked back toward the cabin, the night wrapping around them like a living thing. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Delete your story. Resign. Yes, I did. She leaned into his warmth. He stopped, turning her to face him. The moonlight silvered his features, turning his eyes to liquid metal. I can't promise this will be easy. I don't want easy, she reached up, tracing the line of his jaw. I want what's real between us. Around them, the forest breathed with nocturnal life. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Not in challenge or grief, but in the simple joy of running beneath the moon. Another answered, then another, the chorus building until the night vibrated with their voices. Rhett tilted his head, listening. Then, to her surprise, he threw back his head and joined them, his howl deeper, more commanding, but harmonizing perfectly with the others. The sound sent shivers down Mara's spine, not fear, but recognition. This was who he was, who they were. When the howls faded, he looked down at her, a question in his eyes. I still can't do that, she said with a small smile. You don't need to. He drew her close. They hear you anyway. As they walked the last distance to the cabin, Mara understood what he meant. She might never howl beneath the moon, never run on 4 legs through the forest, never feel the change of bone and sinew that was their birthright. But she had made her choice, had claimed her place. 6 months could change everything or nothing at all. Mara stood at the edge of the club's VIP balcony, watching the crowd pulse below. Shadow's Edge had undergone a transformation since she'd first stepped through its doors. The decor remained sleek and dark, but something had shifted in the atmosphere. Less predatory, more electric. A place where secrets were kept, not hunted. Her gaze drifted to Rhett, moving through the crowd with effortless authority. Even in this sea of humanity, he stood apart. Something in his posture, his movements, that spoke of contained power. He paused occasionally to speak with staff or greet regulars, but his eyes found hers every few minutes, a silent check-in that had become their habit. "Still can't believe you pulled this off," Nina said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of wine. She handed one to Mara. "The council was convinced you'd crack within weeks." Mara accepted the glass with a slight smile. "They underestimated how good journalists are at keeping sources confidential." "Is that what we are now? Sources?" Nina's tone was light, but her eyes were shrewd. "Family," Mara corrected, and meant it. Nina's expression softened. "Yes, I suppose we are." The past 6 months had transformed Mara's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. After deleting her exposé and resigning from the Tribune, she'd expected to feel adrift, stripped of the identity she'd built over years. Instead, she'd discovered new purpose, not as Pack exactly, but as something adjacent, a bridge between worlds. Her evaluation with the council had been tense but ultimately successful. Elder Kincaid himself had been impressed by her commitment to secrecy, though Thornton remained skeptical, a shadow of suspicion that Mara doubted would ever fully lift. "Is Cassian coming tonight?" she asked, spotting several of Rhett's lieutenants, but not his brother. "He's meeting with the Northside Pack. Diplomatic stuff." Nina sipped her wine. "He's good at it, better than Rhett." "Different strengths," Mara observed. "Speaking of strength, your story made quite an impact." Nina nodded toward the bar where the evening news played silently on a screen. Footage showed police leading several men in handcuffs, prominent business figures linked to Silas's criminal empire. 3 arrests this week alone. Mara felt a flicker of professional pride. Her journalism career hadn't ended after all. It had evolved. Working freelance, she'd spent months investigating the human side of Silas's operations. Money laundering, protection rackets, political bribes. The series of exposés had rocked the city's power structure and earned her industry recognition. Most importantly, it had allowed her to pursue truth without compromising Rhett's world. The police commissioner called it the most significant organized crime bust in a decade, she said. And they still don't have the full picture. "They never will," Nina replied. "Some truths aren't meant for everyone." Below, Rhett finished his circuit of the club and headed toward the stairs that would bring him to them. Mara felt that familiar pull, the magnetic awareness that had only intensified since they'd claimed each other. "And that's my cue to make myself scarce," Nina said with a knowing smile. She squeezed Mara's arm gently. "See you at the gathering tomorrow." "Wouldn't miss it." As Nina departed, Rhett reached the top of the stairs. He moved to Mara's side, one hand settling at the small of her back. A casual touch that sent warmth cascading through her. "Busy night," she observed. His attention was on her, not the crowd. "You look thoughtful. Just taking stock." She leaned into him slightly. 6 months is a milestone." His lips curved. "You're keeping count?" "Journalist's habit. We track timelines." "And how does this timeline look to you?" She considered the question seriously. "Improbable. Challenging." She turned to face him fully. "Right." Something flickered in his eyes, that rare, unguarded vulnerability that he showed only to her. "No regrets, then?" "Not one." She touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "You?" His answer was to draw her closer, his kiss conveying what words never could quite capture. Even here, surrounded by hundreds of people, they created their own pocket of intimacy, a skill they'd perfected out of necessity. When they separated, his eyes had darkened, pupils expanded slightly in a way she'd learned to recognize. The wolf, stirring beneath the surface. "Let's go upstairs," he said, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. "It's early," she teased. "Don't you have a club to run?" "Liam can handle it." His thumb traced circles against her lower back. "I have more important matters to attend to." The heat in his gaze sent a familiar thrill through her. 6 months together had done nothing to dampen the intensity between them. If anything, it had deepened, enriched by trust and understanding. "Well," she said, setting down her barely touched wine. "If it's important." His answering smile held promises only she could decode. The apartment above the club had become their shared space, a blend of his minimalism and her more eclectic tastes. Books now filled shelves that had once been empty. Photographs dotted surfaces that had been bare. Her laptop and notes often sprawled across the dining table, evidence of her ongoing work. But tonight, neither of them was interested in the domestic details of their life together. The door had barely closed behind them before Rhett was pulling her against him, his mouth finding hers with an urgency that made her heart race. Her hands slid beneath his shirt, seeking the heat of his skin, the subtle ridges of scars, both old and new. "Missed you today," he murmured against her throat. "I was only gone a few hours." She tilted her head, giving him better access. "Too long." His teeth grazed her pulse point, gentle but with the promise of something wilder. They'd learned each other's rhythms over these months, when to be gentle, when to let the beast closer to the surface. Tonight, she sensed, he needed the release that came with surrender to his more primal nature. The full moon was 3 days away, and his control, while still formidable, grew thinner as it approached. "Show me," she whispered against his ear. Permission. Invitation. His eyes met hers, amber flecks appearing in the dark irises. "You're sure?" "Always." He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to their bedroom. What followed was a dance they'd perfected, passion tempered by care, wildness balanced with tenderness. His strength, usually so carefully restrained, freer here in this space where they both knew the boundaries. Her trust, complete and unwavering. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets, her head resting on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. This quiet aftermath was as precious to her as the passion that preceded it. These moments when he was fully himself, neither entirely man nor wolf, but the complex blend of both. "Council meeting went well," he said into the comfortable silence. She propped herself up to look at him. "You didn't mention a council meeting." "Didn't want to worry you." His expression was carefully neutral. "Thornton requested an update on our situation. 6-month review? Something like that." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Elder Kincaid was surprisingly supportive. Said your handling of the Silas investigation demonstrated remarkable discretion." "High praise from the werewolf pope," she said dryly. That earned a chuckle. Not quite that powerful, but close enough. His expression grew more serious. "They've officially closed the matter. No more evaluations, no more supervision. We've passed their test." Relief washed through her. Though she'd never showed it, the weight of council scrutiny had been a constant low-grade pressure these past months. "So we're free." "As free as anyone ever is." He pulled her closer. "There will always be those who disapprove. Thornton made that clear, but officially, yes. The council recognizes you as pack-adjacent, protected, accepted." "Pack-adjacent," she repeated, testing the term. "Is that even a thing?" "It is now." His smile held a hint of pride. "You've created your own category, Mara." "As you tend to do." She settled back against him, contemplating this new status. Not wolf, but not merely human either. Something in between, a bridge between worlds that had remained separate for centuries. "Cassian deserves some credit," Rhett continued. "He's been advocating for a more progressive approach to human-wolf relations, starting with certain trusted individuals. Like journalists who delete career-making stories? Like exceptional women who see beyond the surface." His hand stilled on her shoulder. "The council is considering his proposals. It would be unprecedented, but necessary," she said. "The world is changing. Technology makes old secrets harder to keep." "Yes." His tone suggested he'd had this conversation before, likely with more traditional members of his kind. "Better to control the narrative than be blindsided by it." Mara smiled against his chest. Now you sound like a journalist. I've been well taught. His fingers resumed their gentle tracing. Speaking of which, your next article? Almost finished. Following the money trail through 3 shell companies back to Deputy Mayor Harrison. He was taking payoffs to expedite permits for Silas's legitimate businesses. And the not-so-legitimate ones. Still connecting those dots, but I'm close. She felt the familiar thrill of the chase, the puzzle pieces aligning. Harrison's assistant agreed to talk. Off the record, but it's a start. Rhett was silent for a moment. Be careful. Silas may be gone, but his human associates aren't as easily dispatched. I'm always careful. She pressed a kiss to his collarbone. And I have excellent protection. The sound was non-committal, but his arm tightened around her. They lay in comfortable silence, the muted bass from the club below providing a distant rhythmic backdrop. Mara found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here, from suspicious journalist and secretive subject to, whatever they were now, partners. Mates in the pack vernacular, though the term still felt strange on her tongue. The gathering tomorrow, Rhett said eventually. Cassian's bringing someone. This caught her interest. Someone? As in a woman he's been seeing. Human. The significance wasn't lost on either of them. He wanted you to know in advance. Is he nervous about it? Terrified, though he'd never admit it. There was affection in Rhett's voice, the rekindled brotherhood that had been one of the unexpected gifts of the past 6 months. He values your opinion, your precedent. The responsibility of being first settled on her shoulders, not uncomfortably, but with weight nonetheless. I'll make her feel welcome. I know you will. He shifted to look at her directly. You've changed things, Mara. More than you know. There was something in his tone that made her study his face. Is that a good thing? It's a necessary thing. His expression was solemn. The old ways were failing us. Isolation breeds fear, on both sides. And fear breeds violence, she finished, thinking of Silas, of the ugliness his paranoia had spawned. Yes. He traced the line of her cheekbone. You taught me that connection can be strength, not weakness. The admission touched something deep in her. From Rhett, always so careful with his words, this was profound. She kissed him softly. No heat this time. Just acknowledgement of the truth between them. We should get some sleep, she said eventually. Early pack gathering tomorrow. He nodded, but made no move to release her. Stay like this a while longer. She settled back against him, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. Outside their window, the city continued its nocturnal life. Traffic sounds, distant sirens, the occasional burst of laughter from club patrons on the street below. Her world had expanded in ways she never could have predicted, encompassing both human concerns and preternatural ones. She thought of her former colleagues at the Tribune, how they'd react if they knew she now attended werewolf gatherings and helped manage a nightclub that served as neutral territory for supernatural beings. How she'd found family among those society would label monsters. What are you thinking? Rhett asked, his voice low in the darkness. That monsters aren't always what they seem. She traced the outline of a scar on his shoulder, legacy of some long-ago battle. And sometimes, what looks like a story is really just the beginning. He made a sound of agreement, his breathing slowing towards sleep. Mara remained awake a little longer, savouring the weight of his arm around her, the heat of his body next to hers. 6 months ago, she'd made a choice that had seemed impossible. To turn away from the story of a lifetime, to protect secrets not her own. She hadn't lost herself in that choice as she'd feared. She'd found a different path, one that allowed her to pursue justice while protecting those who now mattered most. Her recent exposés had brought down corrupt officials and businessmen. She'd carved out a new reputation as a journalist who couldn't be bought or intimidated. And at night, she came home to him. To this complex, fierce, loyal man who contained multitudes, who transformed beneath the moon but remained himself in all the ways that mattered. As sleep finally claimed her, Mara's last conscious thought was how wrong she'd been that first night in his club, when she'd sensed the predator behind his eyes and thought she'd found her story. She hadn't fallen in love with a monster. She'd found the man inside him, and chosen both.